Chapter 754. Chu Xiu didn't know how to use the blood pearl that he had obtained from Lin Bao Huang. Back then, he had chosen this item only because when he saw the blood pearl, he had felt a throbbing sensation in his body. That was why Chu Xiu had chosen it. Originally, Chu Xiu was going to wait until he returned to the Jianghu Hall to study this thing. He did not expect that the war between the righteous and demonic factions would come so soon. The moon-worshipping cult had already started fighting, so he had to put this matter aside for the time being. And now, he felt the throbbing of this blood bead. This thing actually needed to be fed with fresh blood for sacrificial refining? However, when he thought that this thing was something from the Kunlun devil cult in the past, Chu Xiu also felt relieved. It would be strange if the things of the demonic path were not evil. Therefore, after feeling this throbbing, Chu Xiu immediately gave up using the great soul-searching hand of extinguishing sky and extinguishing earth to kill people. Instead, he used the great demonic blood technique to drain the opponent's blood and qi. However, this move of his was extremely conspicuous. When Chu Xiu used the great soul-searching hand of extinguishing sky and extinguishing earth, there was actually no strange phenomenon. The power of the person's spirit was completely extracted, and the person died directly. There was not even the release of gang qi. However, at this time, Chu Xiu used the great demonic blood technique with all his strength. Everywhere he passed, the evil power of the great demonic blood technique began to madly extract the blood of the surrounding warriors. Strands of blood flew, with Chu Xiu in the center. At this time, Chu Xiu looked like the reincarnation of the blood demon. Moreover, the warriors who had their blood and qi drained became extremely terrifying. Without blood and qi, the corpses were like dried corpses. There was only a layer of skin wrapped around the body, and they simply did not look like humans. In this way, wherever Chu Xiu passed, he directly left behind a ground of dried corpses, which was extremely conspicuous. If Chu Xiu kept a low profile, it would have been fine. However, he was so high profile that he was wantonly killing here. It immediately attracted the attention of some righteous sects powerhouses, and they all attacked him. Chu Xiu! How dare you! A furious shout rang out and 3 old Daoist priests from the pure Yang Dao sect surrounded Chu Xiu in the middle. Among them was Master Su Yangzi, who had come to find trouble with Chu Xiu before. Last time, Chu Xiu, you were lucky enough to survive. Now, you're getting involved in the matter of moon-worshipping cult. Are you courting death? Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, I don't know if I'm courting death, but I do know that you're definitely here to court death. A loser dares to bark in front of me. If not for that young martial uncle of yours bringing your patriarch's pure yang sword, do you think you have the right to say such nonsense in front of me? Although it was said that different people could not make plans together, but Chu Xiu was not extreme to the point of being hostile to all the people from the righteous sections. For example, Chu Xiu had a good relationship with Fang Qi Shao. He did not hate Ing Bailu, but rather admired him. Of course, Fang Qi Shao did not come today, and neither did Ing Bailu. Sword King City and Shangshui Ing clan were not idiots. The war between the righteous and demonic sects was a war between the righteous and demonic sections. It was not a battle to the death. They had already taken action with their high-end combat power, so the people below them naturally did not need to come and fight. However, if one were to say who Chu Xiu hated the most among the righteous sects, it would undoubtedly be the monks from Great Light Temple and the Daoists from Chunyang Dao sect. The former was unreasonable, while the latter only listened to reason. It was impossible to communicate with them. Therefore, when Chu Xiu faced them, he usually liked to use his fists and knives to talk. That was more effective than talking with reason. Therefore, before Zuyangzi and the other 2 could speak, a demonic saber appeared in Chu Xiu's hand. It was the evil saber of the 7 demonic sabers. The demonic dance was left with Mo Yezi to be repaired and upgraded. During this time, Chu Xiu did not use the saber much. Although the 7 demonic saber was also a saber, its greatest effect was to arouse the 7 emotions and 6 desires in one's heart. When faced head-on, its toughness was far inferior to the demonic dance. Guan Xiyu had shattered his beloved saber in the past, but it did not matter. For the current Chu Xiu, he was emotionless, without love, and without emotions. Even if he had the beloved saber in his hand, he could not control it like he could comprehend the hatred of the hatred saber. However, the other sabers were still fine. Chu Xiu did not want them to shatter as well. However, when he attacked Xianxia and the other two, he used the evil saber at the right time. Who said that the righteous sects did not have evil in their hearts? The righteousness that they boasted about was the greatest evil. The evil saber fell, and the saber chi swept out. Although it was blocked by the powerful pure yang energy of the 3 of them, the power of the evil saber penetrated deep into their hearts and affected their inner demons. Xianxia and the other 2 old Daoists were veteran martial Dao grandmasters of the Chunyang Dao sect. Putting aside their own strength, they had experienced enough. They might have killed more people than some of the demonic Dao sect's people. Who would dare to say that none of the people he had killed in his life were innocent? Who dared to say that they did not have any evil intentions and did not do anything that went against their conscience? Before they could attack, Xianxia and the other 2 were hit by the evil saber. They spat out a mouthful of blood and barely suppressed their restless inner demons. Set up the pure yang demon-slaying sword array. Su Yangzi shouted angrily. The other 2 martial Dao grandmasters of the Chunyang Dao sect also attacked immediately. 2 longswords flew out from each of them. Together with the longswords in their hands, the pure yang energy and sharp sword chi danced on the 9 longswords. The violent sword chi soared into the sky. The 9 swords circulated and surrounded Chu Xiu in the center. As the sword chi scattered, they attacked wildly at Chu Xiu. Su Yangzi was just stubborn, but he was not an idiot. Since he had already suffered a loss in the hands of Chu Xiu, he naturally would not rush over recklessly this time. Although they had suffered a small loss in the first exchange, they still had the strength to fight. The pure yang demon-slaying sword formation of the Chunyang Dao sect was quite famous in the pugilistic world. In the past, a demon lord of the Kunlun devil cult had died in this sword formation. Of course, the sword formation was set up by the 9 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses of the Chunyang Dao sect. There was also a heaven and earth elemental realm powerhouse who presided over the sword formation. Now that the 3 of them had joined forces, although their power could not be compared to the patriarch, it was not weak either. In the sword formation, the pure yang energy soared into the sky. It was very eye-catching. Some people on the battlefield subconsciously looked over. Could it be that the Chunyang Dao sect was fighting with a divine magus of the moon-worshipping cult? Even the pure yang demon-slaying sword formation was used. However, when they saw that the one who was surrounded in the sword formation was actually Chu Xiu, they were relieved. Chu Xiu's strength was obvious to all. He was not weaker than the divine magus of the moon-worshipping cult. It should be said that his strength was even far stronger than most of the divine magi of the moon-worshipping cult. It was worth it for the Chunyang Dao sect to use the pure yang demon-slaying sword formation to deal with him. Some of the people of the moon-worshipping cult suddenly had a good impression of Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was a member of the Yinma clan. Although he had promised to help them, the people of the moon-worshipping cult thought that he might not use his full strength. But now it seemed that they had misjudged Chu Xiu. He had attracted 3 grandmaster-level powerhouses of the Chunyang Dao sect all at once, sharing a lot of the pressure for them. This Chu Xiu was really meticulous. Even the Holy Virgin of the moon-worshipping cult controlled the Gu insect to kill the opponent while saying to Xianxia, who had also come to help, "Look at Chu Xiu. He only came to help, but he could attract 3 grandmaster-level powerhouses of the Chunyang Dao sect. Look at yourself." Xianxia wanted to vomit blood when he heard this. How could they compare? If he had the ability to fight against 3 martial Dao grandmasters, would he still need to suck up to a woman like her? The Inma clan was invited by the moon-worshipping cult with conditions. As a sect of the Bright Demon clan, the Evil Pole sect had always followed the moon-worshipping cult's lead. Of course, he had to come himself. In the end, he took the initiative to come, but he was despised for being weak. Xianxia's resentment could even be felt by some of the warriors around him. They could not help but stay away from him. At the same time, Xianxia's attacks became more violent. At this time, in the field, Chu Xiu was trapped in the sword formation. He raised his eyebrows, put away the evil sword in his hand, and made a Buddhist seal with his hand. The sun-changing technique had already been cast. The pure yang demon-slaying sword formation could slay demons, but he did not know if this Buddha could. In an instant, endless Buddhist light rose from the sword formation. The Vairocana phantom behind Chu Xiu formed the colorless fixing palm seal. Everything in front of him began to distort and melt, and the countless pure yang sword chi were instantly destroyed. Damn it! This is the work of those fools from the Buddhist sects. Seeing this scene, Su Yangzi could not help but curse. Master Tam Yuan, a Buddhist holy monk, actually passed on a pure Buddhist technique to Chu Xiu, a demon whose hands were stained with blood. If this was not a fool, then what was? The pure yang demon-slaying sword formation had a great suppression on the power of demons, but it was not the same as slaying the Buddha. For other power attributes, this sword formation seemed very normal. The Vairocana phantom continued to attack wildly, and the sword formation erupted with dazzling gang chi light, but it was still useless. Cracks gradually appeared on the 9 swords. Finally, under Chu Xiu's ferocious attacks, they all exploded with a loud bang. Just based on the foundation of power, Chu Xiu was stronger than the few old Daoists from the Chunyang Dao sect. The foundation of power was not something that grew stronger the longer one lived. At the age of Su Yangzi and the others, it was already good if their power did not decline, let alone increase. The power of the primordial spirit condensed into arrows, and the soul-extinguishing arrows shot straight at Su Yangzi. Moreover, the arrows came one after another, without any pause. With the support of the heaven's sun gazing at air, it was basically impossible to dodge. Su Yangzi could only use his pure yang astral qi to resist. Compared to the true qi of other attributes, pure yang astral qi was even stronger against this primordial spirit's secret technique. Unfortunately, it was still useless. After a few arrows, Su Yangzi's primordial spirit was already heavily injured, and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. The swords in the hands of the remaining 2 old Daoists had already shattered, but they could not just watch as Su Yangzi was killed. Therefore, when one of them held a horsetail whisk and swung it down, the horsetail whisk erupted with thousands of golden rays, enveloping Chu Xiu's entire body. The other person formed a seal with his hand. Pure yang gang qi condensed in the seal. It was as if the sun was falling from the sky. It fell towards Chu Xiu's head, causing a violent explosion. Chapter 755. A large orthodox sect like the pure yang Daoist sect had heritage and heritage. Such a large sect might not be stronger than some of the rising forces, but their only advantage was that all the warriors from the pure yang Daoist sect were not too weak. To put it simply, martial artists from large sects like Chunyang Dao sect might not have an upper limit, but their lower limit was very high. Unlike the World Alliance, there was only one powerhouse, Chenqing Di, and the rest were all nobodies. There were only a handful of people in the underworld who could be besieged by 3 martial Dao grandmasters from Chunyang Dao sect. Unfortunately, they had encountered one today. Looking at the 2 Chunyang Dao sect grandmasters who were attacking him, Chu Xiu had a murderous look in his eyes. The blood pearl in his body was very eager for the power of qi and blood. The qi and blood of a martial Dao grandmaster was definitely stronger than that of a martial artist at the oneness of heaven and man realm. Although these 2 guys did not look young, they were not to the point where they could not squeeze out any qi and blood. Therefore, Chu Xiu's figure moved, his speed exploding to the extreme. As he charged toward one of them, he shot 3 soul-extinguishing arrows in a row at the other person. The annihilating heaven and earth obliterating selfless killing fist fell with a domineering momentum as if it wanted to crush everything. It went straight toward the martial artist who was using the Dao seal. With a loud bang, countless demonic aura and pure yang qi scattered in all directions. Chu Xiu was surrounded by black demonic aura and even formed an armor. This was the sign of the 9 heavens fiend golden body refinement. After obtaining this technique, Chu Xiu had been fighting with others. This kind of body refining technique could only improve through continuous fighting. Although this technique was given to him by Lu Fengxian, Chu Xiu's understanding of this technique might even be stronger than Lu Fengxian's. Surrounded by demonic aura, Chu Xiu was like a demon god who had descended. The pure yang qi around the Chunyang Dao sect martial artist opposite him had been completely smashed by Chu Xiu. After several punches, half of the martial artist's bones were even broken, and blood spurted out of his mouth. No matter how strong the strength and foundation of the Chunyang Dao sect martial artist was, he was still not as strong as the current Chu Xiu. Don't waste so much qi and blood. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hands. Countless demonic aura and blood qi burst out like a spider web, completely entangling the Chunyang Dao sect martial artist. It was like a huge black and red cocoon, extremely terrifying. Su Yangzi and the other martial artists no longer cared about the injuries of their primordial spirits. They released their strongest power and attacked Chu Xiu. Among them, Su Yangzi even ignited his qi and blood. Clearly, he was ready to fight with his life. Chu Xiu formed a Buddhist seal with his hands and quickly formed the seals of the fast and slow 9 words formula. 9 Buddhist seals circled around his body, but at this moment, Chu Xiu was still enveloped by the demonic aura armor, which made him look abnormally evil. When the hand seals landed, the power of the 9 seals combined into one instantly shattered everything in front of him. The pure yang qi was completely melted. At this moment, Chu Xiu swung his hand, and the huge black and red cocoon smashed towards the two like a huge hammer. Su Yangzi and Su Yangzi knew that the people inside were their senior and junior brothers, so they did not dare to take it head-on. They could only wrap their vital energy in the huge cocoon and try to make it fall slowly. However, at that moment, the large cocoon suddenly exploded. Countless demonic auras and bloodlust auras burst out. In an instant, Master Su Yangzi and the other pure Yang Dao sect grandmaster were sent flying with blood spurting out of their mouths. There was also a huge crater that was hundreds of feet wide on the ground. Some of the warriors who were closer were even blown to smithereens. Looking at the center of the huge pit, the Chunyang Dao sect grandmaster had already been sucked dry by Chu Xiu. After the chaotic battlefield saw this scene, the small area close to Chu Xiu suddenly fell into a moment of silence. Facing 3 martial Dao grandmasters from Chunyang Dao sect head-on with his own strength and easily killing one and seriously injuring the other 2, could it be that Chu Xiu's strength had really reached the true fire spirit refinement state? However, how long had it been since he broke through to martial Dao grandmaster? Seeing was believing. Chu Xiu's killing of Fang Jinwu could be considered a trick and a sneak attack. Although he still died in the end, it was still not a very convincing story. Now that Chu Xiu was facing the enemy head-on in front of so many people, there was no need to doubt his strength anymore. At this moment, Chu Xiu was feeling the blood pearl on his body. This thing had swallowed a lot of martial artists' blood before. There were people of all levels, but there was no change at that time. It was not until this thing swallowed the blood of a martial Dao grandmaster that there was a qualitative change. Chu Xiu could not tell what kind of change it was, but he seemed to feel that there were many things hidden in this blood pearl. Of course, at this time, Chu Xiu had no time to study those things because he found that with his actions, he seemed to have angered the crowd. Great Light Temple's Vajra courtyard Skanda Venerable, Su Yen brought 2 old monks who were also from the Vajra courtyard. Although they were old, their qi and blood were still strong and surrounded Chu Xiu. It was true that Taoism and Buddhism could not coexist, but the Great Light Temple could not just watch a person from the demonic Tao act violently here. There was also a Sword Tao Grandmaster from the Storm Sword Tomb and the Forgetting Sword Hut walking towards Chu Xiu with a sword. Cheng Tingshan from the Hidden Sword Villa, who had been defeated by Chu Xiu in the past, also walked towards Chu Xiu with two swords in his hands with a hint of murderous intent. Cheng Tingshan had seen Chu Xiu before, but at that time, he acted as if he did not see him and still killed those demonic Tao martial artists from the moon-worshipping cult. Now that he saw Chu Xiu being besieged by everyone, he did not mind hitting him when he was down again. Chu Xiu furrowed his brows. This was not in line with his previous plan. Previously, Chu Xiu did plan to keep a low profile, but now it seemed that it would not work. Now, the righteous sects were joining forces to attack the moon-worshipping cult. In other words, they were the hunters, and the moon-worshipping cult was the prey. As a result, Chu Xiu was arrogantly killing here. He was even more conspicuous than the 9 great divine magus priests of the moon-worshipping cult. This was simply a provocation. If they did not get rid of him, who knew how many more people would die in his hands? However, all of a sudden, 6 martial Tao grandmasters turned to attack Chu Xiu, which greatly reduced the pressure on the moon-worshipping cult. Even Dong Huang Tai looked at Chu Xiu with a praising gaze. When he said that he would help, he did not hold back at all. There were very few honest and kind young people like him now. Sometimes, it was not a good thing to be too calculative. Just like Dong Huang Tai, if he wanted to kill someone, he would go all out. He would directly burn some of the burning sky mirror. Why would he care about so many schemes and gains and losses? Anyway, now he saw that Chu Xiu was quite to his liking. It was a pity that Chu Xiu had already become a subordinate of the Hidden Devil clan. It was impossible for him to snatch him away. This also made Dong Huang Tai feel a little pity. What future would there be for Chu Xiu to follow those old farts of the Hidden Devil clan? If he joined the moon-worshipping cult, Dong Huang Tai would even be willing to nurture him as the next generation Dong Huang Tai. Chu Xiu did not know what the others were thinking, but he knew that he seemed to be in big trouble. To be honest, Chu Xiu would rather fight with the seriously injured Fang Jinwu again than fall into this kind of siege. The reason was very simple. When fighting with Fang Jinwu, no matter how strong the opponent was, he could concentrate and use 100% or even 120% of his strength. Now that he was being besieged, Chu Xiu had to be distracted to observe the attacks of the others. This was bound to affect his battle. Moreover, any accidents could happen in this kind of siege, so Chu Xiu did not dare to go all out. He even had to save 20% of his strength to deal with unexpected situations. This kind of battle was a little frustrating. Moreover, the opponents were not a motley crew. It was impossible for them to be like when Chu Xiu was besieged in the past. He would first kill a few who shouted happily, and the others would naturally choose to escape. None of the people in front of him were to be trifled with. Su Yan chanted the name of Buddha, and the 2 monks beside him shone with a dazzling Buddhist light. It was as if they were plated with a layer of gold as they charged towards Chu Xiu. They had not cultivated the Temple of Great Light's indestructible golden body, but their strength was not weak. Every step they took would cause the ground to tremble. At this time, Cheng Tingshan, the 3 people from Storm Sword Mound, and the Forgetful Sword Hut also drew their swords. In an instant, sword chi shot into the sky, bringing with it a boundless sharpness. They followed closely behind the 3 people from the Temple of Great Light and stabbed towards Chu Xiu. These 6 people did not know each other before. Only Cheng Tingshan had a wider circle of friends and could talk to anyone. However, their rich experience in fighting in the Jianghu allowed them to have a tacit understanding when they attacked. The 3 warriors from the Temple of Great Light relied on their close combat prowess to fight Chu Xiu. As long as Chu Xiu revealed the slightest opening, the three people's sword chi would merge into one and attack Chu Xiu. Faced with this kind of power, Chu Xiu's speed exploded to the extreme. As he retreated, he also cast Heaven's Sun gazing at air to the extreme. As he escaped, he evaded the attacks of the few people. Although he looked a little flustered and messy, he was able to temporarily block them. He had to think about how he could kill a few more while he retreated, so that the blood beads on his body would be completely satiated. At this time, when Xing Situ, who had a grudge against Chu Xiu before, saw this scene, he could not help but frown. Seeing Chu Xiu's strength, Xing Situ felt a lingering fear in his heart. Fortunately, he was still rational back then. He did not directly fall out with Chu Xiu because he was worried that Chu Xiu was also a member of the demonic Dao and Wei Shiya's faction. Otherwise, if he angered Chu Xiu, he would definitely not be able to withstand the strength that Chu Xiu had displayed. However, at this time, Xing Situ suddenly thought of something, and his expression became a little uncertain. After a while, he suddenly sent a voice transmission to the martial arts master beside him, who was working together with him to fight against the enemy. "Brother Lin, do me a favor and drag the battle to Chu Xiu." Chapter 756. The man who teamed up with Xing Situ was called Lin Fang. Although he was a martial Dao grandmaster, he wasn't well known in the Jianghu. His master was from a small branch of the lurking demons and had only accepted him as a disciple before his death. Therefore, he didn't have much time to teach him and didn't train him to become a martial Dao grandmaster. Instead, he was allowed to mingle with the lurking demons. It was not until a while ago that he relied on a treasure to exchange for a period of guidance from Xing Situ's master, Yuan Tianfang, during the Yinma clan's gathering. That was how he was able to step into the martial Dao grandmaster realm. Because of this, he had become good friends with Xing Situ, and even treated him as his superior. Lin Fang didn't participate in the battle against the Earth Demon Hall, but he had heard of the conflict and grievances between Xing Situ and Chu Xiu. Therefore, when he heard Xing Situ's words, he vaguely guessed what Xing Situ wanted to do. Lin Fang couldn't help but lower his voice. "Are you crazy? What kind of situation is this? You're playing tricks in front of so many people. These personal grievances are nothing. You can settle them later. If the patriarchs see this, even Senior Yuan won't be able to protect you." The lurking demons had already reached such a level that killing each other was, of course, prohibited. But a ban was a ban. Such things had definitely happened before. However, it was a serious matter for Xing Situ to still be scheming in the midst of the righteous and demonic wars. Xing Situ said indifferently, "Why are you so agitated? I'm not an idiot. Of course I won't plot against Chu Xiu at a time like this. It's just that we're in a mess right now. We can't beat our opponents, so we accidentally escaped to Chu Xiu's side and then escaped to recuperate. Is there a problem with that? Chu Xiu is fighting hard for moon-worshipping sect, but we don't want to lose our lives for moon-worshipping sect." Seeing that Lin Fang was still hesitating, Xing Situ couldn't help but sneer. "Do you think that since you didn't offend Chu Xiu, you don't have to play tricks with me? You're wrong. You don't understand Chu Xiu. Although he's quite famous in Jianghu, he's actually not that broad-minded. You and I are good friends, including the fact that you've received Master's guidance and successfully became a martial Dao Grandmaster. These are all proof of our relationship. With Chu Xiu's strength and potential, he would definitely become a great figure in the Yinma clan in the future. My master is not good at networking, nor is he good at scheming, so he has always been alone. In the future, if Chu Xiu ascends to the throne, he might suppress my branch. With the relationship between us, do you think that Chu Xiu would leave you out? It doesn't matter if it succeeds or not, it's better than sitting around and waiting for death." Lin Fang's master died early, so he actually didn't know much about the matters of the upper echelons of the Yinma clan. He didn't know if Xing Situ was telling the truth. However, Xing Situ was right about one thing. He was very close to Xing Situ's branch. If he refused today, he didn't know if he would offend Chu Xiu or not, but he would definitely offend Xing Situ. Therefore, he could only cooperate with Xing Situ and pretend to be weak, leading people to Chu Xiu's side. The two people who fought with them were two martial Dao grandmasters from the true martial sect. In fact, they didn't use their full strength. In fact, the true martial sect was somewhat opposed to this war between the righteous and evil sects. In the last war between the righteous and evil sects, it was Ning Xuanji who took action and disappeared with Dugu Weiwei. It could be said that they perished together and saved the entire Jianghu. However, the end result was that the true martial sect had declined from its peak, and had never been able to recover. Apart from some reputation, the true martial sect hadn't obtained anything valuable or meaningful. This had made the disciples of the true martial sect feel very wronged and unworthy. In this war between the righteous and evil sects, it was fine if Lu Changlu took action, but they actually wanted to take action as well. This was even more unworthy. Therefore, during the battle, all the cultivators of the true martial sect didn't fight with their lives on the line. They were all conserving their strength. At this time, when they saw Xing Situ and Lin Fang escape, they thought that the other party's strength was about to be exhausted and they fled because they felt that they couldn't win. This made them more spirited. If they could easily kill two martial Dao grandmasters from the hidden demon clan without paying too much of a price, it was still a worthwhile trade. Therefore, as one chased and the other fled, the two people unconsciously chased after Chu Xiu. At this time, Xing Situ and Lin Fang unleashed all their earth vigor qi at the same time and even burned a little of their qi and blood to unleash their maximum speed. In an instant, they had already shaken off the two people, leaving the two martial Dao grandmasters of the true martial sect stunned. They didn't know what the other party was doing. At this time, Cheng Tingshan saw the two people and his eyes lit up. He immediately shouted, "Brothers from the true martial sect, help me stop the devil Chu Xiu." Cheng Tingshan was very depressed that 6 people were chasing after one person, but they ended up being fooled by that person. The others were also going crazy. In the past, they had only heard that Chu Xiu's combat strength was outstanding, but they had never heard that he was so talented in escaping. Originally, the people of the true martial sect didn't want to participate in the siege of a devil like Chu Xiu, but since Cheng Tingshan had spoken, they couldn't refuse. They could only change their target and kill Chu Xiu. Seeing this scene, a trace of coldness flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes and he looked at Xing Situ with a trace of killing intent. Although he didn't have evidence to prove that the two people were lured here by Xing Situ, this kind of thing didn't need evidence. Chu Xiu really didn't expect Xing Situ to play this game at this time. He was simply courting death. However, this was in line with Xing Situ's character. The people of Jianghu all said that Chu Xiu was crazy and acted abnormally. In fact, Chu Xiu's craziness was only on the surface. When others saw Chu Xiu do something crazy, Chu Xiu would only do it if he had more than 50% confidence. As for the remaining 50%, it was up to fate. Xing Situ was different. He never considered the consequences of his actions, just like his master. Back then, he wanted to forge the 9 Yin and Red Abyss Devil swords. Without any preparation, he began to kill people to forge the swords. In the end, he was chased all over Jianghu. If Chu Xiu had been in this situation, he would have definitely plotted in secret and killed a large number of martial artists from the 5 major sword sects to forge the swords. Then, he would have planned an escape route and calmly escaped. This was the biggest difference between Chu Xiu and Xing Situ. Right now, Xing Situ had suddenly come up with this idea. He had just started a feud with Chu Xiu and now he was up to something. He didn't care about the situation at all. This was clearly Xing Situ's style. In the distance, Xing Situ also saw the murderous look in Chu Xiu's eyes. He couldn't help but sneer. He didn't care at all. So what if he saw it? Both sides were already enemies anyway. Without any evidence, even if Chu Xiu reported this to Wei Shuya, he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Lin Fang, who stood next to Xing Situ, was a little nervous. He wasn't Xing Situ, who had Yuan Tianfang's protection. He was a demonic martial artist who was originally a rogue cultivator. It was extremely difficult for him to become a martial Dao grandmaster. Now that he had offended Chu Xiu, it would be troublesome. However, it was Chu Xiu who was in trouble. His heaven sun gazing at air skill was indeed miraculous. He had been able to escape from the siege of 6 martial Dao grandmasters. Now that there were 2 more people, the pressure on Chu Xiu increased. These 2 people weren't too strong. His heaven sun gazing at air skill could see through their flaws. The problem was that even though he could see through their flaws, sometimes Chu Xiu couldn't dodge them and could only fight them head-on. The battle here also attracted the attention of many people, and everyone present was shocked. Chu Xiu was really strong. He was fighting against 8 martial artists of the same level. Perhaps even a true fire spirit refinement state expert didn't have this kind of treatment. Seeing the 8 people rushing at Chu Xiu from all directions like an inescapable net, leaving almost no space for Chu Xiu to escape, Chu Xiu's eyes also revealed a fierce murderous intent. The greedy blade appeared in Chu Xiu's hand. Terrifying devil qi and murderous qi were all poured into the greedy blade. An extremely turbulent saber intent surged. It was even more powerful than the saber intent on the greedy blade that could arouse people's greed. As the saber slashed down, the gang energy's saber light instantly drowned everything. It was as if it was tearing the sky and earth apart, carrying the great power of heaven and earth with it. 7 limits, sea breaking. The moment the saber slashed out, the greedy blade in Chu Xiu's hand couldn't withstand the powerful force and shattered. It made Chu Xiu's heart ache for 3 breaths. If the weapon was not sturdy enough to perform a martial skill of this level, it would basically be like a consumable. It would shatter every time it was used. At this moment, Cheng Tingshan and the other 8 people were fighting against Chu Xiu's sea breaking at the same time. At this time, no one dared to hold back. Everyone attacked with all their strength. Gang energy and sword lights of various attributes burst out one after another. Only then did they barely block Chu Xiu's sea-breaking saber. However, the 2 martial arts practitioners from the true martial sect who were weaker among the 8 of them couldn't withstand the powerful saber intent. They spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. Cheng Tingshan and the others didn't have it easy either. Although the force was distributed among the 8 of them, his hands were still numb from the shock of the saber. Su Yan and the other 2 from the Great Light Temple were the only ones who were in a better condition. Their physical cultivation was extremely powerful. At this moment, apart from being a little exhausted, they weren't injured. The 8 of them looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of shock in their eyes. If it were anyone else fighting against 8 people, they would only be able to barely withstand it. However, Chu Xiu actually dared to fight back head-on. Moreover, he even repelled all 8 of them. The strength of his strength was terrifying. At this moment, Chu Xiu gathered all the demonic energy around him. Wisps of pitch-black demonic energy surrounded Chu Xiu's body. Even his eyes were dyed pitch-black. The terrifying demonic energy in Chu Xiu's hands condensed into a ferocious-looking giant bow. As the bow was knocked, 2 giant demonic energy hands condensed behind Chu Xiu. One of them held the bow, while the other 3 held the bowstring. As the bow was pulled into a full moon, a terrifying aura condensed in the demonic bow. Seeing this, the expressions of Cheng Tingshan and the other 8 people changed. They quickly retreated, running as far as they could. Chapter 757. Chu Xiu had only used the Triple City Annihilation arrow once, which was when he faced Fang Jinwu. In reality, no one had seen the details of that battle, but when Chu Xiu's arrow pierced through the giant Buddha, everyone in the distance had seen it. Therefore, when Feng Manlu wrote about Chu Xiu, he naturally included those details. The few people present had also heard about that battle. At that moment, when they saw Chu Xiu's stance, everyone knew that it had to be the terrifying arrow that Chu Xiu had used to kill Feng Jinwu back then. They had spent so much effort to block that slash just now, let alone Chu Xiu's arrow. It was almost certain that anyone who was hit would die. When they besieged Chu Xiu earlier, none of them were afraid. Even if some of them were killed by Chu Xiu on the spot, none of them would retreat. However, the problem was that Chu Xiu was clearly pointing an arrow at them. As long as he let go, he would take away a life. No one knew if they were that person, and no one wanted to be that person. This kind of psychological pressure was unbearable even if it was just a lie. If the Great Light Temple was in danger, Su Yan would have the guts to take Chu Xiu's arrow head-on. Even if he died, the other disciples of the Great Light Temple would avenge him. However, under such circumstances, Su Yan did not want to die so pointlessly. The 8 martial Dao masters were frightened by Chu Xiu's stance and fled in panic. Not only was the scene shocking, but it was also a little funny. Feng Manla's anemophilia observed the battlefield carefully from a tree high above, not missing any details. Previously, they had been observing Donghuang Tai and the other powerhouses in the true fire spirit refinement realm, but somehow, their target had changed to Chu Xiu. It had to be said that Chu Xiu, the outsider who came to help, was even more radical and high-profile than the martial artists of the moon-worshipping cult. Those who didn't know would think that he was Yi Xiaonan's direct disciple. Apart from the Eastern Emperor Tai and the other powerhouses of the true fire refinement realm, Chu Xiu had killed the most people and caused the greatest impact. Seeing how Chu Xiu was able to frighten the 8 of them into fleeing in panic with just a single move, this might really gave off the feeling of a tyrant from the demonic path. At this moment, the expression in Chu Xiu's eyes didn't change at all as he watched the 8 of them flee. A pitch-black arrow condensed in the demonic bow, and that terrifying power made even Chu Xiu's heart palpitate. The Triple City Extinguishing Arrow was a powerful martial skill that could destroy a giant steel city in the past. Now, if Chu Xiu were to use it, he would probably only be able to scratch the surface. He might not even be able to display 100th or even 1,000th of this martial skill's power. Of course, this kind of power was enough for the current Chu Xiu. Previously, when Chu Xiu used the Triple City Extinguishing Arrow, because he didn't have any experience, he used his blood qi to condense the arrow. However, there was a first time for everything. The first time, he wasn't familiar with it, but the second time, he felt much better. Just like the current Chu Xiu, although he had also exploded with almost all of his power, he wasn't so miserable that he had to use the power of his blood qi to condense the arrow. The 3 arms released the bowstring at the same time, and in an instant, an extremely powerful wave of demonic energy erupted. Wherever the arrow passed, everything would wither and wither. It was an extreme power of nirvanic destruction, and everything would be destroyed. The warriors who were in the path of the arrow, whether they were from the righteous path or the demonic path, all had a look of horror on their faces. They immediately gave up fighting and hurriedly dodged, for fear that Chu Xiu's arrow would miss and accidentally injure them. However, what was surprising was that Chu Xiu's arrow was not aimed at Qingting Shan, nor was it aimed at Su Yan from the Great Light Temple, nor was it aimed at the warriors from the Storm Sword Tomb and the real martial arts cult. Instead, it was aimed at Xing Situ. After Xing Situ diverted the trouble, they didn't go too far away. Instead, they observed the battle situation on Chu Xiu's side from a short distance. When he saw that Chu Xiu had used all his strength to break through the situation, Xing Situ secretly cursed that the warriors of the righteous path were really useless. They were even ranked on the reputation list, but this was all they had? However, in the next moment, Chu Xiu's Triple City Annihilation Arrow had already burst out. The moment the arrow was released, Xing Situ had a feeling that the arrow was aimed at him. The reason was very simple. The moment the arrow was released, a horrifying killing intent had already locked onto him. There was even an extremely mysterious feeling that locked onto his surroundings. It felt like an inescapable net, blocking all the places around him to dodge. He was like an insect that had fallen into a spider's web, and his so-called struggle was futile. In this life-and-death crisis, Xianxia directly spat out a mouthful of blood. The two long swords in front of him, the Nine Yin and Red Abyss, merged into one, and a powerful demonic energy and blood chi swept out, forming a huge vortex in front of him. Next to him, Lin Fang was stunned at first, and then he felt the power of the arrow. Immediately, his scalp went numb. He burned his chi and blood, turned around, and fled. At this moment, how could he care about their friendship in the past and not offend Yuan Tianfang? As Chu Xiu shot the arrow, everyone present was stunned. No one knew what Chu Xiu was up to. Just now, he was fighting 1 against 8, showing off the power of the diabolism. Why did he suddenly turn his head to his own people and prepare to slay demons and defend righteousness? Xianxia was still very famous in Jianghu. After all, in the past, he had killed many warriors of the 5 major sword sects and survived the joint pursuit of the 5 major sword sects. But everyone knew that he was the boss of the Hidden Devil clan, the disciple of the 10 Directions Old Devil, Yuan Tianfang, and a standard warrior of the Hidden Devil clan. Why did Chu Xiu want to kill him now? The power of Chu Xiu's sword was so influential that even Yuan Tianfang, who was fighting with the Karma Meditation Hall's first seat of the Great Light Temple, was attracted. But when he saw that the target of Chu Xiu's arrow was Xianxia, his expression suddenly changed, and he shouted angrily, "Chu Xiu! How dare you!" Yuan Tianfang was an old man dressed in black, and his face was grim. He was also a ruthless person when he was at his peak. He seemed to have some enmity with the Dao sect, and most of the people he killed were Taoist priests. Back then, the Chunyang Dao sect and the True Martial sect's True Fire Spirit Refinement Realm powerhouses were defeated by him. But ever since he was sent flying by the old Taoist priest beside the old celestial master with a horsetail whisk, he rarely returned to the Central Plains, especially the land of West Chu. But it was not embarrassing to be defeated by Dragon Tiger Mountain. After all, it was the #1 sect of the Dao sect, and it did not damage his prestige as the boss of the demon sect. But now, Chu Xiu dared to attack his disciple in such a situation. This made Yuan Tianfang unusually angry, and he felt that his prestige had been challenged. He wanted to help, but Su Jing, who was in front of him, laughed softly. Buddha's light shone around him, and his body split into 5, all attacking Yuan Tianfang at the same time. Yuan Tianfang could not even tell which one was real. The Great Light Temple did not include the older warriors who had begun to cultivate in seclusion. Among the warriors of the Su generation, other than the abbot, the strongest were the first seats of the 3 major meditation halls. Among them, Su Yun was the strongest and the most overbearing. Although Su Du seemed to be frivolous, he was the youngest and had the greatest potential. Only Su Jing of the Karma Hall rarely left the Great Light Temple, and he did not even leave the Karma Hall. No one knew how strong he was. They only knew that he had extremely high attainments in the path of karma, and he could be called the brain of the Great Light Temple. When Su Ci was in seclusion and Su Yun was in charge of the Great Light Temple, he had to discuss with Su Jing whenever something big happened. This time, it was rare for Su Jing to appear in front of the people of the Jianghu. In everyone's opinion, this mysterious first seat of the Karma Hall must be an enlightened monk, and his strength must have reached the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm. But in reality, it was true that Su Jing was in the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm, but he was a fair and fat monk. He always had an annoying smile on his face that said, "I have seen through everything." He had already seen Chu Xiu's attack just now. Although he didn't know why Chu Xiu would kill each other at such a time, if he didn't add fuel to the fire when it was a battle between demonic cultivators, could it be that he was going to stop them? Yuan Tianfang was blocked by Su Jing and could not get away. He could only take out a slightly damaged flag with devil chi from the secret spacebox and throw it in Xing Situ's direction. The flag came roaring with devil chi, wanting to help his disciple block this attack. This demonic chi flag wasn't his weapon. Instead, it was the battle flag of one of the Kunlun demon sects halls in the past. Although it was already damaged, it was still stained with demonic blood and its strength was much stronger than before. It could be considered as a treasure. Originally, he had planned to give this to one of his disciples as a gift, but in order to save someone, he had no choice but to use it first. However, under Chu Xiu's Triple City Destruction Arrow, the devil chi on the flag that barely made it in time surged violently, but it was instantly pierced by the arrow. Xing Situ roared angrily and gave up on dodging the arrow. He gathered all his strength and chi on the 9-yin red abyss. The two swords combined into one, and the energy that erupted was equally terrifying. However, it was still useless. The pitch-black arrow was only slightly hindered. In the next moment, Xing Situ's 9-yin red abyss began to shatter. These two demonic weapons, forged with the blood of countless swordsmen, were finally completely shattered in Chu Xiu's hands. The pitch-black power of nirvanic destruction erupted. Xing Situ watched as the arrow pierced his heart meridian. A black dot began to spread, and in an instant, all his life force was devoured by the arrow of nirvanic destruction. Everyone was dumbfounded. However, Chu Xiu didn't seem to care. He walked up to Xing Situ and used the great demonic blood art to devour the remaining blood in his body. Although Xing Situ had burned some of his blood essence, he still had some left. After devouring the blood of so many martial Dao masters, the blood pearl in Chu Xiu's body finally fluctuated. It was full. Chapter 758. Did Xing Situ think others wouldn't dare do the same? How naive. Xing Situ was a classic example. Most demonic cultivators acted according to their whims and disregarded the consequences. Xing Situ hadn't died because of his strength and luck, but this time, he dared provoke Chu Xiu without considering the consequences. That was suicide. Did he think Chu Xiu wouldn't dare kill him? Chu Xiu didn't care about evidence when it came to killing. The only difference was whether he could kill or not. In Chu Xiu's eyes, Xing Situ was the kind of person who could be killed. Chu Xiu. You're dead. Yuan Tianfang roared angrily again and immediately tried to break away from Su Jing to attack Chu Xiu. This time, Su Jing didn't stop him, allowing Yuan Tianfang to attack Chu Xiu. He wasn't going to stand in the way of demonic cultivators killing each other. However, Wei Shuya appeared in front of Yuan Tianfang, preventing him from making a move. Elder Wei. Get out of my way. Chu Xiu killed my disciple. Wei Shuya growled. We'll talk about it after this. Yuan Tianfang was furious. So many people saw it. Chu Xiu killed my disciple. Old Wei, are you still planning to side with Chu Xiu at this time? Wei Shuya's expression didn't change. I told you, no matter who he killed, we'll talk about it later. This is the battlefield of the righteous and demonic sections. You've lived for so long, yet you still can't tell what's more important. Yuan Tianfang's dark face flushed red, but he forced himself to hold it in. He turned to fight Su Jing again, his attacks more ferocious than before, as if he were venting his anger. It had to be said that Wei Shuya's experience was very useful at times. Yuan Tianfang was at the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm, but when Wei Shuya and the 5 Sky Fiends of Ninth Mountain had conquered the world and made a name for themselves, Yuan Tianfang was just a poor wandering demonic cultivator. His strength wasn't even worth mentioning. Of course, the main reason Yuan Tianfang took a step back was because of Wei Shuya's strength. Although Wei Shuya was not young, his strength was unfathomable in the Hidden Devil clan. He was definitely not untouchable. It was unwise to attack Wei Shuya at this time. Wei Shuya turned to look at Chu Xiu and frowned slightly. To be honest, he hadn't seen what Xing Situ had done. However, he believed in Chu Xiu. It wasn't that he believed in Chu Xiu's character, that he wouldn't kill a fellow disciple, but that he believed that Chu Xiu wouldn't do something stupid, especially not in front of so many people. Therefore, since Chu Xiu killed Xing Situ, there must be a reason why he deserved to die. At present, the outcome of the war between the righteous and demonic paths had yet to be decided, so these matters had to wait until later. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, after Chu Xiu devoured Xing Situ's qi and blood, the blood bead in his body was already full. Of course, there was nothing Chu Xiu could do if it wasn't full, because Chu Xiu didn't have the strength to kill another martial Dao master to feed it. This time, although Chu Xiu's execution of the triple extinguishing city arrow did not result in a severe backlash like the last time, he did not feel good either. His strength was almost completely depleted. Therefore, it was time for Chu Xiu to keep a low profile. He retreated to the periphery of the battlefield, and no one stopped him. To be more precise, no one dared to stop him. Chu Xiu's arrow just now was too terrifying. It was so powerful that even a powerhouse at the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm couldn't stop it. Although Chu Xiu didn't seem to be in good condition, who could guarantee that Chu Xiu didn't have the strength to shoot a second arrow? Moreover, Chu Xiu's madness was deeply rooted in people's hearts. Even the moon-worshipping sect thought so. When this guy went crazy, he would even kill his own people. It was really hard to guess. Just as Chu Xiu retreated from the battlefield in a low-key manner, many warriors in the periphery of the moon-worshipping sect were also watching the fierce battle. Among them were people from Wind-Sweeping Tower, and some small forces came to watch the show secretly. Of course, there were also people who came to watch the show openly, such as Qinqing Di. The World Alliance was in West Chu. In his words, it was fine if he didn't participate in this kind of event, but it would be a pity if he couldn't even watch the show. Therefore, Qinqing Di directly sat on the tallest tree with Xia Shaolu and watched the fierce battle not far away. Even Qinqing Di brought a jar of wine with him and took a sip from it from time to time. It was like watching a show, which made the surrounding warriors from Wind-Sweeping Tower speechless. At this time, Xia Shaolu stared at Chu Xiu slowly retreating from the battlefield. He couldn't help but sigh, Brother Chu is really Brother Chu. He forcibly turned the battle between the moon-worshipping sect and the righteous sects into his own home ground. But why is he so desperate? Could it be that the moon-worshipping sect has some secret deal with him? Xia Shaolu only wondered why Chu Xiu was so desperate to kill the righteous sects, but he didn't wonder why Chu Xiu killed Xing Situ. He understood Chu Xiu's character very well. It didn't matter whether that guy was from the Hidden Devil clan or not. As long as he provoked Chu Xiu, he would basically kill him. It was simple and direct. Emperor Qinqingdi chuckled and said, "It doesn't matter if we kill him sooner or later. That kid Chu Xiu has indeed exceeded my expectations. If we let him continue to grow, I reckon that he will become the main character in the next great war between the righteous and demonic factions. But the young people of this generation are really not weak. If I'm not wrong, Zhongxian is also about to break through." In this war, Zhongxian would naturally take part. Just as Chu Xiu was fighting the righteous sects, Zhongxian was also killing in and out of the moon-worshipping sects' warriors. The golden Buddha's light around him soared to the sky. The bright king seal was extremely fierce and violent. Wherever it passed, countless moon-worshipping sects' warriors either had their bones broken or were directly killed on the spot. It was also extremely high-profile. So Zhongxian immediately attracted the moon-worshipping sect saintess and was directly drowned by her poisonous insects. However, Zhongxian's Moonlight King Glaze golden body was too strong. It was so strong that those poisonous insects couldn't even break through his body. Seeing this scene, Yi Tianxia also attacked, but after a few moves, he was directly hit by Zhongxian's bright king seal and was sent flying while vomiting blood. Seeing Zhongxian being so arrogant, Mountain Ghost of the moon-worshipping sect's 9 great magi also began to attack, cooperating with the moon-worshipping sect saintess to kill Zhongxian. In the end, it was 2 against 1, and even when his realm was higher than the other party, Mountain Ghost still couldn't defeat the other party. Moreover, the more he fought, the more Mountain Ghost felt that something was wrong. But before he could react, Zhongxian's body was already shining with a layer of Buddha's light. The simplest bright king seal fell, but it seemed to carry a huge force that could shake mountains, directly hitting Mountain Ghost until he vomited blood and was seriously injured. As the seal blasted out, Zhongxian's aura also continued to rise, and finally reached a critical point. He finally broke through and became a martial Dao Grandmaster. At this moment, the top 3 existences on the Longhu list finally stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm. It could be said that if it weren't for Chu Xiu this time, Zhongxian's performance was also the most eye-catching. Qinqing Di sighed at the side, this generation of young people is really good. Chu Xiu, Zhang Qingzhen, and Zhongxian are probably the ones who advanced to the martial Dao Grandmaster realm the fastest among the recent generations of young martial artists. Fang Qi Shao and Ing Bailu aren't bad either. It's rare, it's really a world of great competition. Such outstanding young talents are emerging one after another, and they're all gathered together. In Qinqing Di's eyes, whether it was Chu Xiu, Zhang Qingzhen, or the others, each of them had the strength to suppress the martial artists of their generation. But now, they were all gathered together. He didn't know if this was a blessing or a curse. Thinking of this, Qinqing Di suddenly glanced at Xia Xiaolu next to him and slapped him on the head, causing Xia Xiaolu to stagger. Look at the others, then look at yourself. When can you become the first on the Longhu list? Are you going to wait until the people before you step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm before it's your turn? Xia Xiaolu covered his head with a wronged expression. Why was he the one who suffered when others broke through? At this time, the situation on the battlefield had somewhat reversed. Previously, it was definitely the righteous sects who had the upper hand. After all, they had the advantage in numbers. Later on, as the Hidden Demon clan joined in, even if the Hidden Demon clan did not plan to go all out, the two sides were still locked in a stalemate. And the one who broke this situation happened to be Chu Xiu, who was prepared to slack off. In this battle, even if there were more than 10 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses, the ones who really played a key role were those martial Dao Grandmasters. In the end, Chu Xiu first crippled 3 people from Chunyang Dao sect, and then attracted the attacks of 8 people. Although the 8 people did not die in the end, Chu Xiu's delay caused the situation to tilt. The righteous sects were under great pressure. At this time, an old Taoist from Chunyang Dao sect who had reached true fire spirit refinement realm suddenly saw Qinqing Di and the others watching the battle from afar. This old Taoist was called Jing Yuanzi, and he was the oldest martial artist in Chunyang Dao sect. He had even participated in the battle to exterminate the 5 sky demons of 9 Heaven Mountain. He could be considered as an existence of the same generation as Wei Shuya. Qinqing Di and the others who were watching the show were not from the diabolism, but they were not from the righteous either. When neither side was a threat to them, protecting themselves was the best choice. But at this time, the righteous sects were at a disadvantage, and they were still watching the show. Did they not see the big picture? Did they want the underworld to become the demonic underworld of the past? That was Jing Yuanzi's mentality. This was the reason why Chu Xiu said that the people from Chunyang Dao sect could not be communicated with at all. They were reasonable, but they only talked about their own reasons. Jing Yuanzi left the battle and quickly came in front of Qinqing Di and the others. He said in a deep voice, "Everyone, the righteous martial arts world is in a disadvantageous situation now. Are you still not going to help? Do you really want the righteous and evil in the underworld to be reversed?" Many of the martial artists present frowned. They were just there to watch the show. Why were they implicated? Qianqing raised his eyebrows and said, "What a joke. What does the battle between the righteous and evil have to do with me?" Jing Yuanzi snorted and said, "Alliance Master Chen, you don't want to help and watch the righteous martial arts world be defeated. Could it be that you have colluded with the moon-worshipping sect?" Chapter 759. Jing Yuanzi's words contained a hint of threat. For all the sects in the pugilistic world, being accused of colluding with the moon-worshipping cult basically made them part of the demon Dao. Qianqing was stunned. Suddenly, a smile bloomed at the corner of his mouth. In the end, the smile even turned into a maniacal laugh. Jing Yuanzi actually felt a little flustered. Colluding? Why would I, Qianqing, collude with others? Old bull nose, are you threatening me? What I hate the most in my life is people threatening me. As soon as he finished speaking, Qianqing blasted out a punch. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed, and the sky and earth collapsed. Qianqing's fist intent was incomparably domineering, just like his person. It was such a simple punch, without any changes, nor did it contain any kind of gang qi. It was a simple punch with pure strength, but it was incomparably domineering. The fist shatters mountains and rivers. Under Qianqing's punch, the surrounding space began to distort, and the sound of the sonic boom was like the roar of thunder. Jing Yuanzi shouted angrily. His hand formed a seal, and powerful pure yang gang qi condensed into a seal, affecting the heaven and earth. His entire person seemed to have descended from the sky, and it was extremely shocking. Although Jing Yuanzi was also old, his appearance here meant that he still had combat power. He had not yet reached the point where his blood and qi were declining due to old age. However, under Qianqing's punch, the sun did not even last for a breath's time. In the next moment, it shattered with a loud bang. Jing Yuanzi spat out a mouthful of blood. Qianqing's punch sent him flying hundreds of feet away, creating a hole that was dozens of feet deep. He immediately passed out. Whether it was the battlefield of the righteous Dao war or the surroundings of Qianqing, it was all silent. Everyone looked at Qianqing in shock. One punch had seriously injured a true fire spirit refinement realm expert to the point of vomiting blood. What was going on with Qianqing? Just now, Chu Xiu fought against 8 people alone, which was at least within common sense. But now, with the strength of Qianqing, it was completely unreasonable. Everyone could sense that Qianqing's punch had clearly surpassed most of the true fire spirit refinement state, but he was still a martial Dao master. But the problem is, have any of you seen such a powerful martial Dao grandmaster? Looking at Jing Yuanzi in the hole, Qianqing sneered, "Ignorant fool." After that, Qianqing took Xia Xiaolu and left. He was not afraid, but the outcome had already been decided, and there was no point in continuing to watch. The righteous sects had sent out ignorant old fellows like Jing Yuanzi. It would be strange if they could destroy the moon-worshipping cult. At this moment, the shock that Qianqing brought to the crowd was still there. Some of the warriors from the Forgetting Sword Hut couldn't help but pout. This old Taoist of the pure Yang Dao sect was really rusty in the head. To actually provoke Emperor Qianqing at a time like this was basically seeking death. In fact, it was easy to imagine that the World Alliance had not risen in West Chu for a long time. Moreover, Qianqing was aggressive and unyielding. How could such a character not offend people? But Qianqing had been in West Chu for a long time. Whether it was the moon-worshipping cult or the Taoist master mansion of Longhu Mountain, these two sects, one evil and one righteous, had not made things difficult for Qianqing. This was not because the moon-worshipping cult and the Taoist master mansion were easy to talk to, but because Qianqing had the strength. In the past, because of the Dong family, someone from the Taoist master mansion had come to cause trouble for Qianqing. In the end, they were stopped by another true fire spirit refinement state expert from the Taoist master mansion. One could imagine the strength of Qingqing. The Daoist master mansion probably knew about it. In the face of an absolute conflict of interest, no one was willing to fight with a monster like Qingqing. And just when the outcome of the battle was about to be decided on the moon-worshipping cult side, the result of the battle on the Broken Intestines Cliff was already out. The fierce battle between the heaven and earth mysterious realm experts was like the end of the world. The area within a radius of more than 10 miles had been turned into a mess. Even the Broken Intestines Cliff had disappeared and was replaced by a big pit. The 3 people from the Sword King's city looked dispirited. Although they were not dead, they were already seriously injured. Especially the human king's swords in their hands. They no longer had their imposing manner. It was obvious that their spiritual nature had been damaged. No one knew if they could recover. Lu Chonglu of the True Martial sect was also very miserable. The horsetail whisk left by Ning Xuanji in his hand had been completely destroyed. His whole face was pale and his aura was weak. If the horsetail whisk had not taken the blow for him just now, he would have already died. The Ying family's patriarch, Ying Si, was constantly panting. His originally meticulous hair was now disheveled. His arms were trembling slightly, and blood was constantly dripping. The only person present who was slightly better was the Great Light Temple's Su Ci. He did not seem to have any injuries. However, the golden Buddhist light around him was extremely dim. It was so dim that it could not even be seen if one did not look carefully. Dong Huang Tai was right. Even when facing the siege of so many people, which seemed like a dead end to others, Yi Xiaonan did not lose. He did not lose. Although he did not lose, he did not win either. At that moment, Yi Xiaonan's white clothes were fluttering in the wind. His chest was stained with specks of blood. It was unknown whether it was his or someone else's. Most importantly, Yi Xiaonan's aura was extremely weak. It was as if he would collapse in the next moment. However, no one present moved. That was what everyone had thought before. In the end, Yi Xiaonan still had strength to spare. No one knew where his limit was. Su Ci let out a long sigh. It's fate. 500 years ago, the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed. The righteous path suppressed the demonic path for 500 years. Now, they can no longer suppress them. The moon blades around Yi Xiaonan danced around him. They were still stained with blood. No one knew who they belonged to. Fate? I, Yi Xiaonan, have never believed in fate. Looking at Su Ci, Yi Xiaonan said calmly, if I had been born 500 years earlier, the demonic path would not have been suppressed by the righteous path for 500 years. Yi Xiaonan's words were very arrogant. However, when he said them, it was as if he was stating a fact. There was not the slightest hint of arrogance. Su Ci silently shook his head and turned to leave. Although they had not lost, they could no longer kill Yi Xiaonan. The few of them were not prepared to fight to the death. They also did not have the determination to fight to the death. They had no reason to fight to the death. Fighting to this extent was already their limit. No one lost, but no one won either. Both sides were injured. However, for the moon-worshipping church, they had won this time. Although Yi Xiaonan was seriously injured and the moon-worshipping church had also suffered heavy losses, they had survived this time. At the very least, there would not be another righteous path and demonic path for a short period of time. Fang Fifan and Qi Yuanli, who were watching from over 5 kilometers away, felt cold sweat soaking their clothes. It wasn't that they were ignorant, but that the battle between these people was too shocking. Even if they were separated by 5 kilometers, they were still on tenterhooks, afraid that they would be implicated. Once everyone had left, Fang Fifan seemed to wake up from a dream. He hurriedly said, "Quick, quick! Send a message to the people of the moon-worshipping church. Tell them that the battle is over." Fang Fifan was still a person who paid attention to details. Although he wanted to witness a righteous path and demonic path war, he would not sit by and watch other martial artists die in vain. Now that Yi Xiaonan's battle was over, there was no need for the battle on the moon-worshipping church's side. In truth, there was no need for the people of Wind-Sweeping Pavilion to send a message. The people of moon-worshipping church had already received the news. For such an important matter, Su Ci would definitely inform Su Yun through a secret technique. There was no point in continuing the battle. After receiving the news, Su Yun suddenly retreated. He looked at Dong Huang Tai with a complicated expression and shouted, "Disciples of the Great Light Temple, retreat!" When this shout was shouted, everyone present was stunned. However, they instantly understood what was going on. Even if Yi Xiaonan did not win the battle at Broken Intestines Cliff, he definitely did not die. Master Su Ci and the others might not be able to do anything to that demon. As the Great Light Temple retreated, the martial artists of the other righteous sects also retreated. The people of the moon-worshipping church did not chase after them. The moon-worshipping church had used all their strength to resist. It could be said that they had suffered heavy losses. At this time, everyone had no strength left. What was the point of chasing after them? However, all the disciples of the moon-worshipping church were cheering. From now on, the status of the moon-worshipping church in the underworld could rise to a higher level. The people of the righteous sects retreated. Wei Shuya also prepared to retreat with his people. To be honest, after this battle, the smell of gunpowder between the moon-worshipping church and Inma did not seem to be so strong. After all, they had fought side by side just now, and no matter what, no matter if it was Ming Mo or Yin Mo, they were both from the demonic Dao. When facing the joint attack of the righteous sects, the only one who could be relied on was the other party. In other words, if it was the Inma clan that was besieged now, the moon-worshipping church would actually take action. Of course, they would not do it for nothing. They would have to pay a price. However, at this moment, Yuan Tianfang walked over with an angry face and said coldly, "Chu Xiu. You killed my disciple. Now you have to give me an explanation, right? It's very simple. Pay with your life." At the critical moment just now, Wei Shuya stopped him. Now that the battle between the righteous and demonic sects was over, it was time to settle the score. Seeing this scene, everyone present also turned their attention to this side. They had seen the scene of Chu Xiu shooting Xing Situ with an arrow. To be honest, everyone was a little curious. They did not know why Chu Xiu wanted to kill his own people. Wei Shuya stood beside Chu Xiu and said calmly, "Tell me, what's going on?" "Don't worry. With I here, black is black, white is white. No one can confuse black and white." Chu Xiu nodded and said directly, "I'm not a lunatic. Why would I kill innocent people at a critical moment? It was Xing Situ who deliberately lured two martial Dao grandmasters from the true martial arts sect to kill me because of the hatred between us. Why can't I kill people when they want to kill me?" Yuan Tianfang said coldly, "Do you have any evidence?" Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Evidence? What a joke. Someone wants to kill me. What evidence do I need? Don't tell me that I have to be schemed against until I'm seriously injured and half dead before that can be considered as evidence." Chapter 760. In front of so many people, Chu Xiu was telling the truth. It was rare for him to be honest, so he was in the right. However, the problem was that when he argued, he was always reasonable. It was rare for him to tell the truth, but there was no evidence. Of course, it didn't matter whether there was evidence or not. Chu Xiu was not Xing Situ, who did things without considering the consequences. From the beginning of killing Xing Situ, Chu Xiu was not worried that Yuan Tianfang, the old guy, could not do anything to him. In terms of status, what was Xing Situ? What qualifications did he have to compare with Chu Xiu? Who was the representative of the younger generation of the Immortal clan? It was him, Chu Xiu. The Immortal clan was famous in the Jianghu. Who had the greatest influence? It was still him, Chu Xiu. In addition to qualifications, Xing Situ was simply incomparable to Chu Xiu. Looking at the other parties' backing and connections, Yuan Tianfang was indeed the big boss of the Immortal clan. That was right, his strength was there. However, Wei Shuya was able to firmly suppress Yuan Tianfang, regardless of whether it was his strength or experience. In the past, the 9 mountains' 5 great sky demons were not called for nothing. In the Immortal clan, anyone who saw Wei Shuya had to respectfully call him Elder Wei. Once there was a dispute, only Wei Shuya was qualified to balance the relationship between all parties. The 9 mountains' 5 great sky demons were the last backbone of the Immortal clan. Whether this group of people admitted it or not, their position was there, and no one could shake it. In terms of other connections, Yuan Tianfang was eccentric and reclusive. Most of the time, he lived in seclusion in the Devil Cliff Cave of the East Pole Mountain, so the number of friends was limited. Needless to say, on Wei Shuya's side, Chu Xiu, the Phaseless Demon sect and the Yin Demon sect represented by Mei Qinglian would stand on his side. Anyway, no matter what, Chu Xiu could not be afraid of Yuan Tianfang at all. How dare you? How dare you quibble? Yuan Tianfang took a step forward, and the demonic qi around him rushed into the sky, and his momentum was incomparably majestic. However, before Chu Xiu could make a move, Wei Shuya stood in front of Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Yuan Tianfang, who are you calling bold? What? Do you have the final say? Don't you know what kind of person your disciple is?" To be honest, even though Chu Xiu had no evidence, Wei Shuya still believed him. Given Xing Situ's personality, it was entirely possible that he would do such a thing. Just as Yuan Tianfang was about to say something, Dong Huangtai, who was watching from the sidelines, said, "I say, old demon Yuan, I don't mean to criticize you, but that disciple of yours isn't very good at all. In the past, he even killed a disciple of the Forgetful Sword Hut in West Chu. His methods could only be called crude. After killing, he ran and even caused our moon-worshipping cult to clash with the Forgetful Sword Hut. Chu Xiu Chu people's disciples, Chu's sects Chu's disciples sects disciple to be he didn't's killing. Our young friend Chu's reputation in the pugilistic world is clear for all to see. To put it bluntly, if he really wanted to kill Xing Situ, he wouldn't have had to do it in public. If he'd schemed in secret, your disciple wouldn't even know how he died." Everyone present was stunned. No one thought that Dong Huangtai would stand up for Chu Xiu. In fact, Dong Huangtai helped Chu Xiu simply because he admired Chu Xiu. During the fierce battle just now, he had a good impression of Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had first seriously injured 3 people, and then fought against 8 people alone. This had attracted a lot of firepower for the moon-worshipping sect. From Dong Huangtai's point of view, people like Chu Xiu were rare. Although Chu Xiu was from the Immortal clan and he could not poach him away, Dong Huangtai was open and aboveboard. If he admired Chu Xiu, then so be it. He did not mind speaking up for Chu Xiu. As Dong Huangtai spoke, the people from the Immortal clan looked at Chu Xiu differently. Dong Huangtai of the moon-worshipping sect praised and protected him. Moreover, he was from the Bright Demon clan. Was Chu Xiu really that charismatic? Yuan Tianfang was so angry that his face turned red, as if he had been poisoned. Wei Shuya protecting Chu Xiu was one thing, but Dong Huangtai also came to join in the fun. Actually, Yuan Tianfang had many disciples. When he lived in seclusion in the Devil's Cliff Cave in the East Pole Mountain, he had accepted many disciples because he was bored. But among these disciples, Xing Situ was the one who was the most similar to him. Yuan Tianfang liked him the most, and he was also the one who worked hard. In the end, he was killed by Chu Xiu under the watchful eyes of everyone. How could Yuan Tianfang swallow this? But today, he had to swallow this even if he didn't want to. Wei Shuya protecting Chu Xiu with his life, but Dong Huangtai was also here. It was basically impossible for him to kill Chu Xiu. Good. 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 Yuan Tianfang spat out these 3 words, then turned to leave. Wei Shuya turned to Chu Xiu and said, "Be careful. This old guy is not very broad-minded." Yuan Tianfang said 3 good in a row, but he was not in a good mood. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "It's okay. I'm not very broad-minded either." After the storm was temporarily suppressed, both sides bid farewell and left. Chu Xiu felt that it was a pity because he didn't get to see Yi Shaonan, the well-deserved number 1 of the Devil Dao. But after such a great battle, it could be said that the pugilistic world could finally enter a period of peace. Of course, both sides had suffered heavy losses, so it was impossible for it to not be stable. In the great battle, Yi Shaonan, Su Ci, and the others all suffered heavy losses. The moon-worshipping church also suffered a lot. More than 10 martial Dao grandmasters from the righteous Dao had fallen, and the rest were incalculable. Even true fire spirit refinement realm experts were seriously injured. The moon-worshipping church didn't have it easy either. Almost the same number of martial Dao grandmasters had fallen, and 4 of the 9 divine magispriests of the moon-worshipping church had died. They couldn't find anyone to replace them in a short time. It could be said to be extremely miserable. The only one who suffered relatively small losses was the Hidden Devil clan. That was because the Hidden Devil clan didn't fight with their lives on the line, and most of them were idling. After such a fierce battle, the pugilistic world's Dragon and Tiger Supreme list should have changed the most. Among the 3 lists, only the Dragon and Tiger list had changed the most. The top 10 of the Fengyun list rarely changed. As for the Supreme list, it couldn't be described in years. Sometimes, there were even no changes for 10 years. But this time, the great battle between the righteous Dao and the devil Dao had blown out a lot of powerhouses, which also led to Wind Sweeping Tower to revise the Dragon and Tiger Supreme list on a large scale. In the Dragon and Tiger list, Zhong Xian had advanced to Martial Dao Grandmaster, and he was ranked 34th on the Fengyun list, which was Chu Xiu's previous position, after Zhang Chengzhen. The other talents on the Dragon and Tiger list had all risen, and Fang Qishao had finally become the number 1 on the Dragon and Tiger list. However, Sword King City probably wouldn't be so happy. Previously, Chu Xiu had heard from Fang Qishao that Sword King City hoped that Fang Qishao could become the 3rd person to step into the Martial Dao Grandmaster realm among his peers. In the end, Zhong Xian had beaten him to it. Relying on someone else's promotion to get to the top was not very glorious. Moreover, this time, all 3 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses of Sword King City were seriously injured. It was even said that Sword King City's treasure, the Human King Sword, seemed to have some problems when fighting with Yi Shaonan. It was unknown if the higher-ups of Sword King City would be in a bad mood because of this and vent their anger on Fang Qishao. Apart from the Dragon and Tiger list, the Fengyun list had changed the most. The number 1 position on the Fengyun list remained unchanged. It was Ing Sanshu of the Ing clan of Shangshui. This person had become famous in the pugilistic world more than 10 years ago. His battle record could be said to be extremely shocking. He had only lost 3 times in his life, so he was also called Ing Sanshu. Even though so many powerhouses had emerged in the war between the righteous and demonic paths, Wind Sweeping Tower still did not replace Ing Sanshu's position. The second was Su Yun of the Great Light Temple. Previously, Su Yun was ranked 7th. This time, Su Yun finally showed his full strength and fought head-on against Dong Huangtai. His power was immeasurable, so he deserved to be ranked 2nd. However, Dong Huangtai, who had once fought to a draw with Su Yun, did not appear on the list. This was not because Wind Sweeping Tower was deliberately suppressing moon-worshipping sect, but because Wind Sweeping Tower did not dare to do so. This time, in the war between the righteous and demonic paths, it seemed that both sides had suffered losses and fought to a draw. In fact, it was still moon-worshipping sect who had the upper hand. Yi Xiaonan had already been in the limelight. How could they let Dong Huangtai be on the list? This was because Dong Huangtai had fought to a draw with Su Yun. If Su Yun was ranked second and Dong Huangtai was ranked third, it would not be comparable to the list, and they would also offend moon-worshipping sect. However, if Dong Huangtai was ranked second, then Fang Fifen's brain would have been squeezed by a door. No matter how stupid he was, he would not do such a thing. Therefore, it was difficult to deal with the second and third places, so they might as well not let Dong Huangtai be on the list. Anyway, this kind of thing was common. Some demonic path martial artists who were too famous would not be on the list. This was not the first time this had happened. However, the third place on the list was a little surprising, because it was actually Chen Qingdi who was ranked third. In the war between the righteous and demonic paths, Chen Qingdi had only been a bystander. He had only thrown one punch, but the result was that he was ranked third on the list. This should be the most dramatic scene. Most importantly, the others could not say anything wrong. Everyone knew that Chen Qingdi's strength was unfathomable. It could not even be measured with common sense. Now, he had also become the only one in the top 10 of the list who had not reached the true fire spiritual refinement realm. As for the changes after that, there were not many. Su Ci had advanced to the mysterious heaven and earth realm, and he had also advanced from the list to the sovereign list. Chu Xiu had also risen by 2 ranks on the list, from 22nd to 19th. In this war between the righteous and demonic paths, Chu Xiu's performance was indeed very eye-catching. It was even more eye-catching than the martial artists of moon-worshipping sect. However, in reality, when it came to the analysis that truly affected his combat strength, Chu Xiu's performance this time was not as convincing as when he had killed Fang Jinwu. Therefore, this time, Wind-Sweeping Tower had raised Chu Xiu's ranking by 2 ranks. In fact, it was not because of Chu Xiu's combat strength, but because of his reputation this time. Hence, it had risen by 2 ranks. Chapter 761. The Wind-Sweeping Tower's reputation list was meant to stir up the pugilistic world, while the sovereign list was filled with heaven and earth enlightenment experts who were still active in the pugilistic world. When Su Ci stepped into the heaven and earth enlightenment realm, he automatically entered the sovereign list. The same was true for the Ying family's patriarch. At the same time, the two of them squeezed out 2 top experts who hadn't appeared in the pugilistic world for a long time. The Wind-Sweeping Towers list was very fair. Apart from Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, the other people on the sovereign list would be replaced by someone else if they didn't appear in the pugilistic world for a certain period of time. Otherwise, experts of this level might go into seclusion for a period of 10 years. If they were to go into seclusion for a few decades to the point where it was unknown whether they were dead or alive, then the experts on the sovereign list would probably surpass those on the reputation list. After returning to the suppression hall, Chu Xiu went into seclusion and told the others not to disturb him for the time being. In fact, Chu Xiu didn't really want to go into seclusion this time. His realm had already stabilized, and he only killed a few weaker cultivators in the fierce battle. He didn't make any breakthroughs in the battle, so seclusion wouldn't be of much use. He actually wanted to study what the blood bead was. Generally, an existence with self-awareness was a weapon spirit. However, when Chu Xiu looked at the blood bead, it didn't look like a weapon spirit at all. Moreover, after absorbing a cultivator's qi and blood, the blood bead didn't change much other than becoming more crystal clear. Chu Xiu couldn't even feel any power in it. He probed a trace of spiritual qi, but there was no reaction. Chu Xiu hesitated for a moment, then seeped a trace of his spiritual force into the blood bead. In an instant, Chu Xiu's spiritual force was pulled into the blood bead. It was so fast that Chu Xiu didn't even have time to react. The next moment, a sea of blood appeared in front of Chu Xiu. Although it was a virtual existence, the smell of blood was extremely pungent. It was as if everything in front of him was really formed by a boundless sea of blood. Right at this moment, the sea of blood boiled, and a huge bronze pillar slowly emerged from the sea of blood. The bronze pillar was engraved with mysterious and complicated patterns, and there were huge bronze chains extending from it, binding a person. Before Chu Xiu could see that person's face clearly, that person spoke in a dignified voice, "Junior of the later generation. Offer up your soul blood, and I'll impart you a supreme demonic art. It'll be more than enough for you to roam the world unhindered. Power, wealth, and beauties are all within your grasp." When that person said the last word, he suddenly saw Chu Xiu's face. His originally dignified tone was like a duck that had been grabbed by the neck. The last word was stuck in his throat and he couldn't spit it out no matter how hard he tried. At this time, Chu Xiu also saw that person's face clearly. It was a burly man in his 40s. His upper body was bare, and his muscles were bulging and covered with blood-colored veins. This person had a gloomy and perverse appearance, and there was a deep killing intent and baleful aura between his brows. He didn't look like someone easy to deal with. "Lord Dugu." The burly man said those 4 words with 30% fear, 50% apprehension, and 20% fawning. However, in the next moment, he suddenly shouted, "No. You're not Lord Dugu. Bah. If you're not Dugu Weiwei, that guy would have died with Ning Xuanji a long time ago. You just happen to look like him, Junior." Chu Xiu frowned and said, "You've seen Dugu Weiwei?" The burly man sneered and said, "Cut the crap, Junior. Offer me your soul blood, and I'll give you something beyond your imagination." Chu Xiu shook his head helplessly and said, "It's really hard to communicate with a guy who doesn't understand human language." As soon as he said that, the demonic qi around Chu Xiu surged and transformed into 2 arms made of demonic qi. A huge and ferocious demonic bow appeared in his hands. He held the bow with one arm and placed the other 3 on the bowstring, aiming straight at the burly man. "Triple City Destroying Arrow. Who the hell are you?" the burly man shouted in horror. This time, he was really a little afraid. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Do you really think I'm an idiot? You're just a remnant soul, yet you dare to bluff in front of me? Your strength may have been unfathomable when you were at your peak in the past, but now you can't even produce a small blood bead. How dare you play these little tricks in front of me?" The burly man's acting skills were not very good, but of course, he was not too bad either. He had just underestimated Chu Xiu. If there were really some young cultivators who had no experience in the martial world, they might really think that they had picked up an old grandpa and hurriedly dripped their blood to recognize him as their master. However, as soon as he entered, Chu Xiu felt that this was just a real illusion. It was said to be real because this was indeed a sea of blood that had existed before. It was said to be an illusion because this sea of blood was simulated. This burly man might have had the strength to create this sea of blood when he was at his peak in the past, but now he could only use his mental strength to simulate the illusion of the past to bluff people. If Chu Xiu had not absorbed so much blood to activate it, this burly man's remnant soul would probably still be in a deep sleep and would not have any strength at all. With the strength of Chu Xiu's mental energy, he was able to simulate all of his martial techniques in this illusion, easily killing them. The burly man's expression changed and he hurriedly said, "Little brother, don't be rash. Who are you? Are you a direct descendant of our sacred sect? Could it be that you're the reincarnation of Lord Dugu?" Chu Xiu said expressionlessly, "It's not your turn to ask questions now. I'll ask and you'll answer. Otherwise, I'll make sure that you won't even be able to keep your remnant soul. Since you recognize the Triple City Destroying Arrow, you should know how powerful this arrow is even if it's just a simulation of mental strength." The burly man nodded repeatedly and looked very cooperative. He was very sensible. In fact, if he did not cooperate, he would probably not even have his remnant soul left. Name. The burly man turned his head a little awkwardly, but he still said in a proud tone, Blood Sea Demon Venerable Lu Jiang. He is this Venerable One. In the past, this Venerable One was in charge of dozens of Kunlun devil cults halls and was known as the strongest blood demon hall. Even the 4 great demon venerables had to be polite to this Venerable One and did not dare to be the slightest bit presumptuous. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. If that was the case, then this guy's background was really not small. After joining the Yinma clan for a long time, Chu Xiu had a relatively good understanding of the structure of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. In the past, the Kunlun devil cult was mainly composed of 2 major forces. One was like Mr. Lu's Phaseless Demon Sect and Mei Qinglianzin Demon Sect, which belonged to a branch of the Kunlun devil cult. The experts in their sects could even obtain the title of Demon Envoy of the Kunlun devil cult. The other was a hall under the jurisdiction of the Kunlun devil cult. Although it was only a hall, the strength of one of the halls could be compared to a major sect in the Jianghu. For example, the Demon Heart Hall that Chu Xiu had obtained inheritance from, the strength of its hall master, Nangong Wuming, was considered top even in the true fire spirit refinement realm. There was also the remnants of the Earth Demon Hall that Chu Xiu had completely destroyed. At its peak, it was also the main hall of the Kunlun devil cult. There was probably more than one person in the true fire spirit refinement realm. As for the few demon lords of the Kunlun devil cult, no one had ever said how strong they were. However, Chu Xiu guessed that they should have reached the heaven and earth mysterious realm. Otherwise, after Dugu Weiwei had disappeared, they would not have been able to resist the alliance of all the righteous sects in the Jianghu for such a long time. This Lu Jiang, he said that he was the hall master of the Blood Demon Hall, which meant that he should be at least in the true fire spirit refinement realm. As for the fact that even the 4 demon lords had to be polite to him, he was most likely trying to flatter himself. If his strength was comparable to the 4 demon lords, then the Kunlun devil cult should have had 5 demon lords in the past. Lu Jiang, he seemed to have seen through Chu Xiu's thoughts. He snorted coldly and said, if it was a head-on battle, I would indeed not be a match for the 4 of them. However, if it was a real fight to the death, even if the 4 of them joined forces, they would not be able to kill me. Cut the crap. Why did you mistake me for Dugu Weiwei just now? Don't tell me that I look exactly the same as Dugu Weiwei. In the past, when Chu Xiu had been in the illusion, he had seen the appearance of a man in the boundless blood sea of the Netherworld River. At that time, Chu Xiu had guessed that it should have been Dugu Weiwei. However, now Lu Jiang, he had mistaken him for Dugu Weiwei. Could it be that he had guessed wrongly? That his current appearance was exactly the same as Dugu Weiwei's? Lu Jiang, he hesitated for a moment, then shook his head and said, how should I put it? Lord Dugu has a secret technique of 3 incarnations. In the past, he had annihilated the Tianyuan Dao Palace, a major Dao sect, and obtained a secret manual of the Dao sect. It was a secret technique that specialized in cultivating the 3 souls of a person. The heaven and earth souls are always outside, and only the life soul is in the body. The Tianyuan Dao Palace cultivates this secret technique to increase their spiritual power, but Lord Dugu has evolved it into a kind of incarnation secret technique. It can allow the heaven and earth souls to leave the body for a long period of time. Furthermore, he has refined 2 soulless incarnations. As long as the heaven and earth souls are inserted into them, they will be equivalent to Lord Dugu's avatars and will have 90% of his original battle strength. Your appearance is exactly the same as Lord Dugu's earth soul incarnation, but I can guarantee that you are definitely not Lord Dugu. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, why? Lu Jiang, he said with certainty, a person's appearance can be changed, but their internal aura, soul, and various other subtle things cannot be changed. In any case, you are definitely not Lord Dugu. Chu Xiu frowned. The connection between him and Dugu Weiwei had always existed, but it was like a tangled mess, and he could never figure it out. Now, the only thing Chu Xiu could be sure of was that his transmigration and his appearance in this world was definitely related to Dugu Weiwei. Previously, Chu Xiu had suspected that he was the reincarnation of Dugu Weiwei, and had even asked Grandmaster Yuan Ji to help him analyze it, but to no avail. Now that he knew that his appearance was exactly the same as one of Dugu Weiwei's incarnations, things became a little more confusing. Temporarily putting aside these things that he could not understand, Chu Xiu continued to point the soul-extinguishing arrow at Lu Jianghe and said, "Now tell me, how did you get imprisoned here?" Just as Lu Jianghe was about to speak, Chu Xiu said in a gloomy tone, "Tell me the truth. Otherwise, if I let go, you know the consequences. Even if you were the former Hall Master of the Blood Demon Hall, you haven't tried the power of the Triple City Extinguishing Arrow, have you? Now you have the chance to try it." Chapter 762. Faced with the threat of the Triple City Destroying Arrow, Lu Jianghe's mouth twitched. Back in the day, he was also an influential figure in the pugilistic world. Even the martial artists of the top sects had to be polite to him. Now, he was being threatened by a junior. It was simply outrageous. However, he was also a person who knew how to judge the situation appropriately. Under such circumstances, if Chu Xiu loosened his grip, he wouldn't even be able to keep his remnant soul. Therefore, Lu Jianghe could only say honestly, "This exalted one is imprisoned here purely because Lord Dugu is unfair. In the past, a single hall of my Blood Demon Hall could match the combined strength of several halls, and this was all achieved by this venerable one alone. I wanted to ask Lord Dugu for the position of Demon Lord, but Lord Dugu didn't give it to me." Chu Xiu asked doubtfully, "And then? If Dugu Weiwo were to shatter Lu Jianghe's physical body just because of such a small matter, leaving only a wisp of his soul to be imprisoned here, wouldn't that be a little too petty?" Lu Jianghe's face was slightly red as he said, "Then, I went to the Wind-Sweeping Sect and threatened the leader of the Wind-Sweeping Sect to change my nickname to Blood Sea Demon Lord. My position was even higher than the other 4 Demon Lords. In the end, Lord Dugu was furious and destroyed my physical body and imprisoned my remnant soul here. However, Lord Dugu knew that the Blood God demonic technique that I cultivated had the strongest recovery ability, second only to the Eternal Demon Pill. Originally, I could have been released after being imprisoned for 100 years and reconstructed my body. However, who would have thought that something would happen to the Kunlun Devil cult? Since then, I have been imprisoned here until now." As he said this, Lu Jianghe was a little embarrassed. It was as if he also knew what kind of stupid thing he had done in the past. However, Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. If that was the case, it was very normal. From Chu Xiu's point of view, Lu Jianghe must have been extremely arrogant in the past. His behavior was a provocation to those in power, let alone an existence like Dugu Weiwei. Whether it's the position of Devil Venerable or something else, it's yours only if I give it to you. But you can't ask for it. In the end, this Lu Jianghe actually acted on his own initiative to snatch it. This was simply courting death. He was challenging Dugu Weiwei's tolerance level. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "So you've been trapped here for the past 500 years?" Lu Jianghe nodded somewhat gloomily and said, "More or less, but most of the time, I was in a deep sleep. The blood soul bead needed to be nourished by the power of blood and qi to nourish the remnant soul of the original body, allowing the original body to remain conscious. Originally, when I was in the Holy Church, this body was just being punished and not being expelled from the Holy Church. There would be people coming to replenish the blood and qi for this body on time. In the end, after those bunch of bastards from the Earth Demon Hall took away the blood soul bead, they didn't even give a tiny bit of blood and qi to this body, making this body basically sleep and wake up in these 500 years. Wake up and sleep again. If this body sees them again, I'll definitely tear all of them to shreds." Talking up to here, Lu Jianghe gnashed his teeth in hatred towards the Earth Demon Hall even more. This was 500 years of time. To others, 500 years was enough for them to grow to the peak of the pugilistic world, such as the old celestial master. In the end, Jianghu was sleeping for these 500 years. It was simply about to drive him crazy from sleeping. However, Chu Xiu also understood why the Earth Demon Hall did not release this fellow. It seemed that Chu Xiu had guessed wrongly. The people of the Earth Demon Hall should know how to use the Blood Soul Bead, and they should also know who was inside. However, the Earth Demon Hall could not determine whether Jianghu hated Dugu Weiwei or whether his heart was still with the Kunlun devil cult, so they were somewhat uncertain. In addition, they did not have the confidence to control this illustrious Blood Demon Hall master from 500 years ago, so they had never touched the Blood Soul Bead. After understanding all of this, Chu Xiu nodded and put away the Triple City extinguishing arrow. He thought about how to deal with this Jianghu. At this time, Jianghu laughed and said, "Kid, although this body does not know what relationship you have with Lord Dugu, based on the fact that you can use the Triple City extinguishing arrow, this body knows that you are definitely a direct descendant of the Holy Church. How about this? Why don't we make a deal? You break the Blood Soul Bead and let this body out. This body will teach you the Blood Demon Hall's secret Blood God demonic technique. It will definitely allow you to stand at the peak of the pugilistic world. Moreover, I can sense that you seem to have learned the demonic blood technique. Previously, when you absorbed the blood and chi into the Blood Soul Bead, you used the demonic blood technique. That thing was created by this body, but it is only a superficial part of the Blood God demonic technique. It is specially used for the disciples who have just joined the Blood Demon Hall to quickly increase their cultivation. When you learn the complete version of the Blood God demonic technique, you will know that the demonic blood technique is just trash." Jianghu's eyes were filled with impatience as he waited for Chu Xiu's reply. Those who had not experienced it would not know how torturous it was to sleep for 500 years in this place without a trace of vitality. He could not wait to go out and once again roam the world. When the Blood Soul Bead had not exhausted all of its power, he could still sense the movements outside. He knew that Dugu Weiwei had perished together with Ning Xuanji. He also knew that the Earth Demon Hall had rebelled and that the Kunlun devil cult had collapsed. Therefore, who in the pugilistic world could compare to him now? When he recovered his cultivation, he would be the true Blood Sea Demon Sovereign. Chu Xiu only looked at Jianghu, who was a little excited. When he had calmed down, Chu Xiu said, "Demon Sovereign, do I look like an idiot to you?" Jianghu frowned and said, "Of course not." "What do you mean?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "What I mean is, since I don't look like an idiot, why would you think of such a good thing? Lord Demon Sovereign, you have to be clear about one thing. You are no longer the Hall Master of the Kunlun Devil Cult's Blood Demon Hall. You are just a small remnant soul that can't even get out of the Blood Soul Bead. I can just move my hand and you will be completely annihilated. So, what right do you have to negotiate with me? Hand over the Blood Demon Divine Art, and I can spare your life. Remember, this is not a deal, this is an order. How dare you? You're courting death." Jianghu was so angry that his face turned red. The spiritual space suddenly set off a sea of blood that was hundreds of feet high, but it was still just for show. It was useless. However, Jianghu was really going to explode. He used to be extremely arrogant, but he did have the right to be arrogant and had the strength to be arrogant. Among the many hall masters and demon envoys of the Kunlun devil cult, his position was almost second only to the 4 great demon sovereigns. Who dared to speak to him? But now, his life was threatened by a junior like Chu Xiu. How could he not be angry? However, when Jianghu saw Chu Xiu's expression remain unchanged amidst the waves of the sea of blood and condense the triple annihilation arrow once more, Jianghu immediately recovered his calm and hurriedly said, "Let's talk. Let's talk. This condition is not good. How about we change to another one?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I said, you have no right to raise conditions now. Lu Jiang he gritted his teeth and said, how about this, I give you my cultivation technique, and even my cultivation comprehension all these years. When you step into the true fire spirit refining realm, then let me out. How about this? Seeing that Chu Xiu's triple destruction arrow had condensed an arrow, Lu Jiang he shouted, wait. I'll give you all the cultivation technique and other things. I won't ask you to let me out, but you have to let me see the outside world, right? I've been holding it in for 500 years, I'm about to die. If you still don't agree to this, then I'll shatter my own remnant soul, and you won't get anything. Hearing Lu Jiang he say this, Chu Xiu knew that he seemed to have forced this person to his limit, and even vulgarities had burst out. If he really forced the other party into a corner, perhaps he would really shatter his own remnant soul. Actually, Chu Xiu dared to force Lu Jiang he like this because he could see that although this person's strength was strong, he wasn't the kind of person who would face death calmly. Otherwise, if he was a little more strong-willed when he was sealed in the blood soul pearl by Dugu Weiwei, he would have shattered his own remnant soul long ago. Why would he wait until now? Lu Jiang he glared at Chu Xiu hatefully. After a few hundred years, are these juniors so difficult to deceive now? Or has this kid really obtained Lord Dugu's true teachings? Not only does he have martial arts, even his way of doing things is very similar to Lord Dugu. He's ruthless and ruthless enough. Hand over the cultivation method and other things first. Lu Jiang he snorted coldly, and a blood-red book emerged from the blood sea. Chu Xiu stretched out his hand, and the book immediately integrated into Chu Xiu's mind. Densely packed words and insights instantly appeared. Aren't you afraid that I'll tamper with this cultivation method? Lu Jiang he suddenly sneered. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, do you dare? If I find anything wrong, I'll immediately destroy your remnant soul. With the heaven's sun gazing at air, Chu Xiu was not at all worried that Lu Jiang he would tamper with it. Anger immediately surged on Lu Jiang he's face, but he didn't dare to challenge Chu Xiu anymore. Although this junior is young, he's ruthless and ruthless enough. You said that you want to see the outside world. Do you want to see the outside world through me? Lu Jiang he nodded gloomily and said, as long as you carry the blood soul pearl with you and feed it a bit of blood every few days, don't let its power be depleted. I won't fall asleep, and I'll naturally be able to see everything outside. Over the past 500 years, Lu Jianghe had almost been driven mad. This person was arrogant and loved to be in the limelight in the past. Making him sleep in such a boring manner for 500 years was simply more painful than killing him. Chu Xiu nodded and said, that's not a problem. That's right, I have another thing to ask you. Tell me, what kind of person is Dugu Weiwei? Ever since Chu Xiu found out about his relationship with Dugu Weiwei, he had always wanted to understand Dugu Weiwei. Unfortunately, there wasn't much information even in the hidden devil lineage. After all, 500 years had passed, and the gap was too big. The martial artists from the orthodox Kunlun devil cult in the past were all dead. The only person from the same era as Dugu Weiwei was the old celestial master. Of course, it was impossible for Chu Xiu to ask the old celestial master about this. Right now, Lu Jiang he was a good source of information. Chapter 763. Lu Jiang he found Chu Xiu's question very strange. He had always thought that Chu Xiu was the successor of Dugu Weiwei. As a successor, how could he not know what kind of person Dugu Weiwei was? However, Lu Jiang he already knew Chu Xiu's character, so he did not dare to say anything more. He hesitated for a moment and said, what kind of person is Lord Dugu? It's hard to say. He is extremely powerful, ruthless, far-sighted, and unparalleled in his schemes. In short, Lord Dugu has all the attributes of a supreme expert. Of course, this is also nonsense, because Lord Dugu's achievements have proven everything. Chu Xiu frowned and said, of course I know all these. What about other aspects? For example, some secrets, some flaws, and so on. Lu Jianghe smiled bitterly and said, I really don't know about this. The sect master's true confidants are the 4 great demon supremacies under him. These 4 guys did lead the holy sect to fight the righteous Dao sects to the death in the past, but they are long dead. Although I am the hall master of the Blood Demon Hall, I joined the holy sect halfway. How could I know those secrets? If I had such a close relationship with Lord Dugu, how could I be locked up here? Lu Jianghe was locked up in the Blood Soul Bead purely because he was courting death. It had nothing to do with how close he was to Dugu Weiwei. However, Chu Xiu was a little annoyed. It was not easy to find a guy from the same era as Dugu Weiwei, but in the end, he was also a good-for-nothing who did not know anything important. Feeling that he could not get anything out of Lu Jianghe, Chu Xiu's mental strength had already left the Blood Soul Bead. After taking a look at the Blood Soul Bead, Chu Xiu put it back into his arms. At this moment, Lu Jianghe's voice sounded in his mind. Hey, I say, what do you want? Chu Xiu frowned slightly. It wasn't a good feeling to have someone talking beside his ear all the time. However, he had already promised Lu Jianghe, and he also wanted to get more information from Lu Jianghe, so it was not good for him to go back on his word. Of course it's to cultivate. What else can I do? Upon hearing this, Lu Jianghe felt a little depressed. Now that he could finally look outside, he didn't expect that he would still have to watch this junior cultivate. It was just as boring. Chu Xiu had cultivated the Great Demon Blood technique before. At that time, Chu Xiu had thought that this technique was magical. He had not expected that this technique would be used by Lu Jianghe for ordinary Blood Demon Hall disciples to improve their cultivation. Lu Jianghe's true secret blood god demonic art, compared to the great demonic blood technique, had already analyzed the word qi to the extreme. Compared to the essence soul and quintessential qi, the power of vitality was the first power that warriors came into contact with. The human body was based on vitality, quintessential qi, and the essence soul. The power of vitality was the foundation of everything. Other than warriors who specialized in body tempering techniques, few people cared about it in the later stages. Warriors who had not reached the oneness of heaven and man realm mainly cultivated their quintessential qi, using it to improve their basic strength. After reaching the oneness of heaven and man realm, they cultivated their quintessential qi while comprehending heaven and earth, achieving the power to draw the power of heaven and earth with their own strength. The blood god demonic art was different. It was said to be divine because it was the most orthodox technique for cultivating one's vitality. Once mastered, it would not be inferior to the indestructible golden body of Buddhism. As long as there was enough vitality to make up for it, one's body could be said to be indestructible. It was said to be demonic because the blood god demonic art could control any vitality and transform it into anything. In theory, it was an ultimate demonic art that combined cultivation and killing. If it was used on the right path, it could ensure that one's vitality would not decay and that one's body would not be destroyed. If Lu Jianghe's remnant soul had not been sealed, he would probably have lived to this day. He might even look younger than the old celestial master. However, once this cultivation technique was used in a massacre, it could be said to be a mass-killing weapon. The more people that died, the stronger the power of blood and qi absorbed by the demonic blood technique. In the end, it was possible for it to evolve into a monstrous sea of blood. Lu Jianghe said that his Hall of Blood Demon was the strongest among the many halls of the Kunlun Devil cult. He was probably not bragging. This technique was born for killing, and its divinity and demonic nature were merged into one. Of course, the strength of the Hall of Blood Demon was built on the strength of the Kunlun Devil cult. In the past, the disciples of the Hall of Blood Demon could kill as much as they wanted in the early stages, using the demonic blood technique to absorb vitality and cultivate. Later on, they could transform it into the blood god demonic art and obtain great power. However, now, if anyone dared to do so, they would definitely attract the endless pursuit of the righteous sections. Using human lives to cultivate was a big taboo, even if the people you killed were your enemies. This kind of rapid cultivation method was also the most feared by the righteous sects, and they absolutely had to stop it. After cultivating the blood god demonic art for 2 months, Chu Xiu also successfully cultivated the blood god demonic art because he had the foundation of the demonic blood technique. However, these 2 months almost drove Lu Jianghe crazy. It was not easy for him to see the scenery outside, but in the end, he could only see Chu Xiu. He was still cultivating in seclusion, so Lu Jianghe could only stand there and talk to himself. Moreover, during this period of time, Chu Xiu also realized that Lu Jianghe was a little talkative. He did not know whether it was because he had been holding it in for so many years, or because he was originally like this. Of course, being talkative did not mean that he was unreliable. For example, Fang Qi Shao, who was even more talkative. It was the same for the self-proclaimed Blood Sea Demon Venerable. Don't be fooled by his cowardice towards Chu Xiu and his talkative appearance. In the past, when he was at his peak, he was a giant of the demonic path whose hands were stained with blood. One could tell just by looking at the boundless sea of blood that he simulated in his illusion. Although those were all fake, they had once existed. Moreover, through this guy's self-talk during this period of time, Chu Xiu also knew that Lu Jianghe's lifespan in the past was actually less than 100 years old, and he was the standard type of person with shocking talent. In addition, his remnant soul had been in deep sleep for the past 500 years, and only his subconscious was suffering in silence. Although he could feel the passage of time, it did not actually harm his lifespan. If Lu Jianghe went out and reconstructed his body and cultivated to the peak, this giant of the demonic path who was in the same generation as the old heavenly master would probably be able to live for another 400 to 500 years. Compared to the old heavenly master now, he was the standard young man. After finishing his seclusion, Chu Xiu walked out of the secret chamber, and Lu Jianghe finally let out a long breath. At this time, Mei Qinglian came up to him and said in surprise, "You've come out of seclusion? I thought you'd be in seclusion for a year or two after going through a great battle between the righteous and demonic paths." Before Chu Xiu could say anything, Lu Jianghe's voice sounded in Chu Xiu's mind when he saw Mei Qinglian. "Oh, it's a female disciple of the darkness demon sect. Not bad, and naturally seductive. He, you're lucky." When the holy sect was still around, the female disciples of the darkness demon sect were the most popular. Unfortunately, they didn't like ordinary people. When the beauty technique is used in bed, you're guaranteed to be in ecstasy. That's the real fusion of spirit and body, and it'll make you feel good to the depths of your spirit. However, you have to pay attention to moderation. Although your qi and blood are strong, if you lose too much of your primordial yang, even your indestructible golden body will be exhausted. Be careful not to be squeezed dry. Otherwise, you can go to some ox-nosed Daoist and see if there are any secret techniques for dual cultivation. I seem to remember. Shut up. Chu Xiu rubbed his head with a headache. He suddenly felt that agreeing to Lu Jianghe's condition was a wrong decision. The main character of the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths is not me. It's Yi Shaonan and the others who need to go into seclusion for a few years. Oh right, did anything happen during this time? Mei Qinglian shrugged and said, I don't know. I just came out of seclusion. I fought with a few Chunyang Dao sects ox-noses for a period of time and gained some benefits. Chu Xiu was a little surprised. He didn't notice it before, but Chunyang Dao sect really put in a lot of effort in this great battle between the righteous and demonic paths. They actually mobilized so many people. Chu Xiu killed one and seriously injured two. There was also a true fire spirit refinement realm Jing Yuanzi who was seriously injured by Qin Qingdi's punch. In the end, the people who were fighting with Mei Qinglian were also people from Chunyang Dao sect. Could it be that the other party sent out all their forces? Lu Jianghe sneered and said, it's normal. Chunyang Dao sect's ox-noses are so annoying. Aren't they just Lu Chunyang's direct descendants? They have been showing off for nearly 10,000 years, but it's still not enough for them to brag. If Ancestor Lu sees that his own descendants are so useless, he will be so angry that his coffin will turn over. This time, Chu Xiu didn't care about Lu Jianghe. He just looked for Tangya and the others to ask. It turned out that there was really nothing serious. The great battle between the righteous and demonic paths had just ended for a long time, and the Jianghu had been calm for a period of time. No one from the demonic path jumped out to make trouble, and no righteous sects came out to eliminate the demons to defend the righteous path. Everyone seemed to have reached a consensus and all of them stopped. However, Tangya brought two other pieces of news. One was that Mirror Lake Villa sent someone to inform Chu Xiu that his heavenly demon dance had been forged by Mo Yezi and successfully promoted to a divine weapon. Another was that Xiang Long sent someone to inform Chu Xiu, asking him to find an opportunity to push the forces of Jianghu Hall to the north, beyond the floating snow city in the extreme north, to the bitter cold land of the extreme north wilderness. Hearing this news, Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Do what you have to do. Don't worry about him." It was unknown if Xiang Long had been too arrogant during this period of time, or if he felt that he couldn't do it anymore, but he was too radical in wanting to leave behind a stable northern Yan for the next generation. Chu Xiu was only cooperating with the northern Yan imperial court, and he was not here to die. Many people had seen the strength of the Great Light Temple through the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths. Abbot Su Ci had stepped into the heaven and earth elemental realm and was promoted to a powerhouse on the sovereign ranking. Su Yun was now ranked second on the Wind Cloud ranking, and it was hard to say when he would be able to cross that threshold. There was also Su Jing, the Karma Zen Hall's first seat, who had not displayed his full strength even during the great battle between the righteous and demonic paths. This kind of strength from the Great Light Temple was simply terrifying. Under the circumstances where there was no direct conflict of interest, Chu Xiu would only provoke the Great Light Temple if he had nothing better to do. Chapter 764. Xiang Long did whatever he wanted, but Chu Xiu would not accompany him in his madness. It just so happened that Master Mo Yezi had successfully refined his heavenly demon dance, so Chu Xiu went to hide in Eastern Qi for the time being. If Xiang Long came to urge him again, he would not be able to. When he came to Eastern Qi again, Lu Jianghe felt a little emotional. The Central Plains is, after all, much better than the desolate lands of the far north. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said in his heart, "You still look down on the northern Yan?" He did not expect that a martial artist of Lu Jianghe's level would actually play the game of regional shady. Lu Jianghe snorted coldly and said, "I am from Eastern Qi. When I first entered the Jianghu, the competition between the Central Plains warriors was fierce. It is not something that the martial artists of the wild land of the north can imagine." The journey was boring, so Chu Xiu went straight to Mirror Lake Villa while chatting with Lu Jianghe. This time, the gatekeeper immediately recognized Chu Xiu and respectfully welcomed Chu Xiu. The battle between the righteous and demonic sects not long ago had attracted the attention of countless people in the Jianghu. In addition to the martial artists of the righteous path and the moon-worshipping cult, there were only two outsiders who stood out the most. One was Chu Xiu, and the other was Qingqing Di. This time, Chu Xiu was in the limelight. Even if some people had not seen him before, they would definitely have heard of his name. Seeing Chu Xiu coming, Mo Yezi said with a face full of excitement, "Your heavenly demon dance has been successfully refined. It was smoother than I expected, and the effect is better." This was also the first time Mo Yezi had attempted to infuse an external weapon spirit into a weapon. Who would have thought that the effects would be so miraculously good? It was even better than the divine weapons he had personally forged or nurtured through nurturing. As he spoke, Mo Yezi took out a black iron box and placed it in front of Chu Xiu. The moment the iron box was opened, a ferocious and evil aura was released. The heavenly demon dance was still the heavenly demon dance, and there was no change in its appearance. However, the sharp edge of the blade had become pitch black. It was not an ordinary black, but a darkness that seemed to be able to devour everything. Before, the heavenly demon dance had only been surrounded by demonic chi. But now, it seemed as if some ferocious evil creature was sealed within it. The demonic aura it emitted made people's hearts tremble. It was as if it wanted to devour everything. Chu Xiu placed his hand on the heavenly demon dance. In an instant, the surrounding atmosphere seemed to turn cold, and all the heaven and earth origin energy in the hall was instantly swallowed up. Mo Yezi said, "This is the effect of infusing the hungry ghost Dao incarnation into the heavenly demon dance. I tested it before. Not only can it devour the heaven and earth origin energy to replenish itself with demonic chi, but the heavenly demon dance can also devour chi and blood, or the opponent's chi." Lu Jianghu said in astonishment, "Kid, your background is not bad. The weapon in your hand was actually forged from the heavenly demon order. In the past, this item was almost the same as an imperial edict, and there were very few of them in circulation. Also, you actually have a relationship with a tool refinement grandmaster. I have underestimated you. Whether it was 500 years ago or now, tool refinement grandmasters were extremely rare existences. Every one of them was incomparably respected. In the past, the Kunlun devil cult naturally forged their own weapons. However, there were only 3 tool refinement grandmasters, which was simply not enough." Chu Xiu ignored Lu Jianghu and only cupped his hands respectfully towards Mo Yezi. "Thank you, great master Mo Yezi. There were some things where helping was a favor, not helping was a duty." Chu Xiu remembered this favor. Great master Mo Yezi chuckled and waved his hand. "There is no need to say such words. I only look at the person when I refine. You, Chu Xiu, meet my requirements. If you have a suitable idea, even if you don't have the materials, I will still take the initiative to refine a weapon for you. Moreover, refining your heavenly demon dance allowed I to make some progress in the path of tool refinement. I didn't expect that I would have a breakthrough in my old age. I should be the one thanking you, Chu Xiu." At this time, Luo Feiheng walked into the living room. Seeing Chu Xiu here, Luo Feiheng immediately became excited and said, "Oh, I ran into you again. Just in time, tell me about the righteous and demonic wars." This time, Luo Feiheng also came to collect the weapon he asked the Mo family to refine. He didn't expect to run into Chu Xiu. At this time, Lu Jianghu's voice resounded in Chu Xiu's mind, "Oh, I didn't expect you to have such good luck with women. This little girl's bone structure is extraordinary, and her physiognomy is indescribable. With a phoenix as an ornament, only a tree can perch. If this little girl marries someone, that person will have the fate of a true dragon and son of heaven. In the future, he will definitely achieve great things." Chu Xiu rubbed his nose. Lu Jianghu also knew the physiognomy of a fortune teller. However, his reading was definitely not accurate. Phoenixes were male and phoenixes were female. Luo Feiheng relied on himself to achieve great things in the future. He didn't need others. Ignoring Lu Jianghu, Chu Xiu asked in astonishment, "The war between the righteous and demonic paths is such a big event. You didn't go to watch the excitement?" Luo Feiheng had a dejected look on his face as he said, "I wanted to go, but with my meager strength, without any backing, I wouldn't even know how I died. I heard that even Chen Qingdi was forced to come and ask for his stand because he wanted to watch the excitement. With my meager strength, it's better for me to obediently listen to Wind-Sweeping Pavilion's battle report. However, as someone who personally experienced the battle, you will definitely know more details than the battle report. Tell me in detail, how was the battle like?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Although I personally experienced the battle, during the intense battle, I only remember the scene when I was fighting. How would I have the time to observe other places?" Wind-sweeping pavilion's battle report is more comprehensive than mine. Although he said that, Chu Xiu still told Luo Feiheng about the matter. After listening, Mo clan sent over the weapons that Luo Feiheng wanted to forge. Just as Luo Feiheng was about to leave, she suddenly asked, "Oh right, did the Yu Palace invite you for the sword welcoming assembly? Brother Lu will also participate, and even as a baptizer, becoming the only outsider to replace a disciple of the Yu Palace to undergo the heavenly sword baptism in the past few hundred years." After Luo Feiheng finished speaking, he also slapped his head. "I almost forgot, with your current identity, you just finished the righteous and demonic wars. Even if the Yu Palace did not participate in the righteous and demonic wars, they would not invite you." Chu Xiu asked doubtfully, "Sword welcoming assembly? Is it very famous?" Luo Feiheng also knew that Chu Xiu was a bit of an idiot when it came to common knowledge, so she explained, "This is the tradition of the Yu Palace, and also one of their trump cards. You also know the strength of the Yu Palace, sometimes strong, sometimes weak. There's no need to talk about it when it's strong, but when it's weak, do you know what they relied on to survive?" This was something that Chu Xiu was really puzzled about, because the 5 major sword sects were generally quite strong, especially the Forgetting Sword Hut and Storm Sword Tomb. These 2 sects were also the best at concealing themselves. Hidden Sword Villa was a bit weak, but their real advantage was not in people, but in the divine weapons and longswords they had accumulated. As for the Yu Palace, other than their Yu sword scripture, Chu Xiu really couldn't think of any trump cards they had. Without waiting for Chu Xiu to answer, Luo Feiheng continued, "The true trump card of the Yu Palace is actually an ancient sword soul, called the Heavenly Sword. Every 100 years, the Yu Palace would hold a sword welcoming assembly to choose an outstanding disciple, and the sword soul would baptize them, deepening their comprehension of sword intent. After that, the Yu Palace would also obtain the recognition of the sword soul, and the heavenly sword soul would protect the Yu Palace for 100 years, and even for the first 30 years, the palace master could even control the sword soul. So the 30 years after the sword welcoming assembly is when the Yu Palace is at their strongest." Chu Xiu asked curiously, "Then why did the Yu Palace want Brother Lu to participate in the heavenly sword baptism? He's not using a sword, so what's the use of comprehending sword intent?" Luo Feiheng shook her head. "I don't know about that, but I heard that it's because the heavenly sword soul is extremely picky. Those who participate in the baptism must be under 40 years old, and the stronger they are, the deeper their understanding of the martial Tao, the better. If a weak one comes up, it might anger the sword soul, causing the baptism to fail, and the Yu Palace would lose the protection of the sword soul for 100 years, which would be a disaster for the Yu Palace. Although Yan Fian isn't weak, she's still lacking compared to Brother Lu. I reckon that the Yu Palace did this to be safe." Speaking up to here, Luo Feiheng suddenly laughed. "Moreover, Brother Lu is one of the Yu Palace's people. After comprehending the sword intent, if he doesn't need it, he can teach it to Yan Fian. They are affectionate, so there's no need to be so clear." Chu Xiu nodded in understanding, but he still felt that something was wrong. At this time, Lu Jianghe's voice suddenly sounded, "Kid, is that Lu Fengxian your friend?" Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Yes, what's wrong?" Lu Jianghe chuckled, "Your friend is going to be unlucky." "What bullshit heavenly sword soul, isn't it just that smelly fox? That thing was actually obtained by the Yu Palace. A slut and a fox spirit, what a match. Speak clearly, what's going on?" Lu Jianghe said, "First, ask that girl if this heavenly sword baptism started 500 years ago. Ask if the sword soul's incarnation is a 9-tailed fox." After Chu Xiu asked Luo Feiheng gave Chu Xiu a strange look. He didn't even know about the sword welcoming assembly, so how did he know about this thing? However, Luo Feiheng still nodded. "I also haven't participated, but it's said that it is like this." Lu Jianghe sneered, "Now we can confirm that it's that smelly fox. What bullshit heavenly sword soul, it's just a remnant of a nine-tailed celestial fox sealed in a longsword. The nine-tailed celestial fox is also known as the nine-tailed demon fox, a fierce beast from ancient times. Its strength is even comparable to a heaven and earth profound understanding expert. In the past, when the holy sect was at its peak, the Red Lotus demon Venerable had once killed a nine-tailed celestial fox in the depths of the 100,000 mountain range, and sealed its remnant soul in an ordinary long sword, thus forming this thing. In the past, this thing was treated as a pet in the Holy Church. Who would have thought that it would now be treated as a treasure by the Yu Palace? Using our Holy Church's item as a trump card, and then saying that it would kill the devil, that slut is so unreasonable. You're tuning into the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.